All right, everybody. How you doing? It's News Debate. I am Lee. Great to have you here. An impromptu show. Usually give 24 hours notice and wasn't going to do a show tonight, but I didn't think I could do a show tomorrow. And I wanted to do another show before the Thanksgiving break ended for millions upon millions of Americans, including myself, live over on Twitter Spaces, live on Stereo, sending video to Twitch and Rumble. All those links at bit.ly/NEWZ debate. That's bit.ly/news debate. Joined right now over on Stereo by Patreon supporter, friend of the show, overall great guy in the Pacific Northwest, Bjorn. Bjorn, how did Thanksgiving go over at the Bjorn residence? I'm going to pull this up. You have shared some pictures of your delicious pies that you are always making.
Yeah, we had a good time. Pies were constructed. Tried did my the huge. Made some pumpkins because you got to make those for standard traditional means. And then this year I attempted a Depression era pie called a Hoosier pie, which is like basically like cream, sugar. It's like a cream pie that doesn't have any eggs in it. So it's like you have like nothing in the house, you make this, and it actually turned out tasting. It's kind of like got a creme brulee top on it, and so it went a little awry when I put it in the broil, and the crust got a little toasty. But it actually tasted okay, despite its looks of being a little bit too carbonerific. But yeah, it turned out pretty good. And then
And did you do the Thanksgiving at your house then? Didn't visit some family? You had it at the Bjorn residence?
Yeah, he had just had like some cousins and aunts over at the house, and we issue turkey and did prime rib this year because why not? Right?
Wow, turkey and prime rib. So that means no ham.
Oh, we did not do turkey and we did not do ham. We only did prime ribs.
Oh, you just did the prime rib. Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah. So, and then we did the corn casserole, which is always my favorite. Cheesy corn, the cornbread, all mixed up together. Delish.
We may be able to see the cheesy corn casserole in the background of this picture you sent of this creme brulee like pie. And then is that a pecan pie behind it? Yeah, I think I can see the whole spread here.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I didn't make the pecan pie though. That was my aunt. She made pecan and she made an apple. So there was plenty of pie.
It's one thing you can count on in this world. It's plenty of pie, and me not talking correctly at the Bjorn residence. So Bjorn, in addition to this being Thanksgiving week, a lot of other stuff happened. Holy cow! You have some thoughts on? Let's see here. National Guard shooting. The two people injured, a man and a woman. The woman passed away, unfortunately. Trump's also closed Venezuela's airspace. He has further restricted, he said something like third world or poor countries, but it's a very specific list. And then he added several more to that pre existing list. So there's a lot going on. What do you think?
And I know it's been kind of wild. I mean, it's really terrible that those people got shot by that person. Pretty sad. They just get targeted. You know, it's also sad that the dude that did it was an Afghani, which obviously is leading, and clearly there's like no chill by the administration. So we're gonna blame all the Afghanis for this individual's crazy thing that they did, and they're gonna like you said, stop any further integration from Afghan, and then they're gonna relook at every Afghani integration, and this is like people who, and some of the folks were like translators for our military and things that were like helping us out. So I think the couple things. I mean, one, he's blaming Biden, of course, because that's his only move. Which I also found out that at least CNN reported that he was actually vetted under the Trump administration. He came in during the Biden administration, but he was actually vetted and approved under Trump, which I found interesting. But I'm just thinking, like, if we're ever in a country ever again, and like we're like using translators, do you think those translators are going to believe that we're going to let them in to our country as like part of the deal, like to like potentially because being a translator is pretty dangerous because you're not only in the zone, but you're also kind of viewed a little bit as a traitor by some of the local folks and kind of targeted. And it can be kind of not good. At least it wasn't in Afghanistan in that situation. So I kind of feel like it might make us unsafer in the future, but who knows? I don't know. I feel sad that we're kind of characterizing the entire country of people based on a single individual's actions.
Yeah, it's a hard choice to make. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not a terrible choice. It might not be the right choice or the best choice, but let's get to some of these details. I have an article here from Reuters talking about what you just alluded to. So we'll get to the details, but yeah, entered in under Biden and then had further contact with the US government through Trump. I would err on the side of came in under Biden. But you're right. There is a lot of blame to go around. And this was an individual, like you were just mentioning. This was someone who helped us out and apparently did the right thing up until he ambushed and shot two National Guard soldiers in DC. But I mean, how many times does this have to happen before we go ahead and say, all right, we're putting a stop to this and then maybe reassessing now? Trump certainly doesn't phrase it that way. I think that's how this can be described. Is it 10 people who come in who helped us out in the Afghanistan war who then do something terrible before we can do this? I think one is, it's not zero, but let's get to some of these facts here. So, from Reuters, Donald Trump's administration has ordered its diplomats worldwide to stop processing visas for Afghan nationals, effectively suspending the special immigration program for Afghans who helped the United States during its 20-year-long occupation of their home country. I like that it's phrased as an occupation of their home country. The cable was sent to all U.S. diplomatic posts on Friday. It says that effective immediately, consular officers are instructed to reject any immigrants or non-immigrant visa applications from Afghan nationals. So that's just blanket, but that also includes applicants for the special immigrant visa because they helped us out during the war. On Wednesday, a former member of one of Afghanistan's CIA-backed units was accused, you have to say accused, but definitely shot two U.S. National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C. One of them later died. That was the woman. Another man has been injured. I'm not sure what the update on him is, but he is alive. The woman has passed away. The cable says that the move to stop processing visas for Afghan nationals was aimed at ensuring the applicant's identity and eligibility for a visa under U.S. law. A volunteer group helping support the United States Afghan allies now says the cable was part of an effort by the Trump administration to bar all Afghans from making it to the United States. I don't know that that's necessarily untrue, but I don't know that it changes things if that's the goal, because once again, what happened happened. The White House has not responded immediately to comment on this. This also includes appointments already scheduled for Afghan applicants. They will not be, I'm sorry, let me say that again. Appointments already scheduled for Afghan applicants will not be canceled. But when they occur, consular officers should refuse to give a visa to them. So I guess we're just screwing them. Come to your appointment, automatic no. The State Department says any unauthorized visas that have not been printed yet, I can't talk. The State Department says any authorized visas, so ones that have already gone through and been approved but have not been printed, should be reversed and canceled, while printed visas should be destroyed and those cases amended in the system and rejected. So this is a total no entry. I don't think it affects people who are already here just yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but I haven't seen anything on that. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service had already halted processing of Afghan nationals' immigration requests indefinitely earlier in the week, and this was just the final nail in the coffin. About 200,000 Afghans have entered the United States through 2021 via the Refugee and Special Visa Program. Applications were still being processed for another 265,000 Afghans who are residing outside of the U.S., including about 180,000 in the special immigrant visa pipeline for those who worked for the U.S. governments. Since returning to office in January, Trump has aggressively prioritized immigration enforcement, sending federal agents to major U.S. cities and turning away asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border. I will add, Biden also turned away asylum seekers. Doesn't seem to mention that here. Interesting. The flurry of promised restrictions since the attack on Wednesday now suggests an increased focus by his administration on legal immigration. That is a nice point to make. Everyone saying things about Trump for the most part, maybe not everybody, vast majority of people talking about Trump says, oh, he's anti-immigration. No. I mean, even under Trump, America is very pro-immigration. Just he wanted to get rid of people who weren't supposed to be here, whatever that may mean, people who were not here legally. And now, if you're from Afghanistan, doesn't look like you're going to be coming here anytime soon. What'll be interesting is whether or not this starts to affect people who are already here. I think people who are already here should have to be revetted and should have to go through some more hoops, if you will. But I don't know that any of this is unreasonable. Someone who worked with the CIA and was given this special visa and was given a chance to escape that horrible place. It is a horrible place. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here. Went and did this. Now, of course, people are individuals, but as the most powerful and richest country in the world, I have no problem with us being able to decide who comes here, who should be here, and who should not, which is one of the reasons why I'm generally for Trump's anti-illegal immigration policy. I have no problem with ICE enforcing the law. I do have a problem with people working directly against ICE, since it is a recognized wing of the government that should be respected. But pushing all that aside, just like when liberal people, to go after our side for a moment, Bjorn, when liberal people cry out after a Sandy Hook or something, I mean, would we be willing to accept that, gun rights are important and we shouldn't paint with a broad brush just because of an individual or many individuals? I mean, you can use the argument in a lot of ways to support liberal causes, and you can use the argument in a lot of ways to detract from liberal causes. So what do you think specifically about now targeting Afghanistan's nationals who are trying to come here, or perhaps at a later time, people who are already here? I don't think it's unreasonable.
I guess the easiest way to make an analogy is if I'm sure that there are Americans who have done crimes in other countries. Let's say there's a American who killed a police officer in Italy. Do you think then that Italy should ban all Americans from coming to Italy because of what one dude did?
I wouldn't have a
Seems
problem with it.
unreasonable.
No, I really wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think
if someone ruins it
unreasonable
for
to me.
everybody else,
Yeah, but you know, like saying an entire.
so then why, when we have
people,
terrible? I'm sorry. I think we have a delay. Why don't you just keep talking?
Oh, I was just saying, like, I guess my main point is like, if we, yeah, I mean, I think it's responsible for the CIA if they want to do a deep dive, make sure there's no like weird sleeper cells or something like that in. But if there's like, mom and their family here who are, here, or like they were coming over and they were ready to go, I think it seems really harsh to not let those folks in who've already been approved, and like their lives are potentially going to change. I mean, such an important thing for so many people to get here and have come to the land of opportunity and like change their entire lives and their entire families' lives. It's just like such a big thing, and then to have that, for the folks who are like we were reading who already have been approved, to then have that like ripped away from them be so devastating. I would be so incredibly sad, and it's just really, really harsh. I think to like completely shut everything off. Again, I don't think it's wrong to refigure out how you're going to like screen these people or vet these people. But I think that's at the end of the day, you can't vet every individual. You don't know what people are going to do. And so, like, if our policy is if a person from another country commits a crime, then we won't let that country in. Then literally, we're going to stop all immigration forever from all countries, because really some individual is going to commit a crime, and what are we going to do? I think if we like take this as a policy and we're going to move forward with it, then that means we're going to have zero immigration soon.
So yeah, if you extrapolate and go forward, eventually someone will have committed a crime from every country. But how often does a foreign national shoot and kill at least one member of the National Guard? I mean, this is a pretty high profile, premeditated. I believe he drove from the Pacific Northwest, like Washington State, to get to Washington, D.C. Yeah, I believe so. I could look that up. I don't think he was local. And when you look at Afghanistan in particular, it's not Italy, it's not Greece, it's not Germany. I mean, this is a country that clearly has a bad government that oppresses its people. We also have the terrible withdrawal and all all the things that happened over that rough 20-year period. So while I agree with what you're saying, if an Italian, we've just been throwing that country around as an example, if an Italian had committed this crime and there was a lockdown on Italian visas, I feel like I'd feel roughly the same way. I don't know if I'd feel 100% the same way, maybe like 60, 75, because Italy is not Afghanistan. But when you have a country that already presents such a risk to us, um, like I kind of see the value in this. But yeah, let me find some of those facts. I believe he did drive from Washington State. Shannon has joined us over on Twitter Spaces. She's a listener right now. Shannon, send me a message if Twitter's going crazy. I invited you as a speaker. I don't know if you can join right now as a speaker, so just let me know if that's not working, and I'll reset Twitter.
Can you hear me, Rose?
So I guess, Bjorn, my question for you then would be, oh, hey, there you are. Hey, Shannon's a speaker. Yeah. Hey, how you doing, Shannon?
I'm okay. How are you, Lee? I've been better.
Yeah, Shannon shared some details with me via message when I sent her a notification that I was doing an improvised show this evening. And Shannon, you can go into as much detail or as little detail as you'd like, but yeah, Shannon's had a hard couple of days. So, Shannon, I really enjoy having you on the show. I really enjoy your perspective, but I also like you as a person. And my best wishes go to you. I'm not going to say what is it? Something prayers, thoughts and prayers. I'm not going to say that. My thoughts are with you, but as an atheist, yeah, I want to represent correctly. But yeah, while most people have had just a really nice, Thanksgiving break, generally it's a good time for most people. Sometimes you get kicked in the cojones, and my thoughts go out to you, Shannon, as you're dealing with a few of those things on your end.
Yeah, I found my dad on the floor 5 days ago, and he's been in the ICU since. He got put on a ventilator 2 days ago because they couldn't get enough oxygen in. They're not really sure what's causing it, but he had a blood clot in his heart. They think he has liver cancer. They're doing a bunch of procedures on him. And my cat passed away this morning, or late last night, early this morning. So that's where I'm
Yeah,
standing
that's a hard
now.
1-2 punch.
Yeah,
So your dad, was he visiting for the holiday? Because I don't think he
yeah,
was there when you got
he was up
discharged
here.
from the Beverly Hills Rehab Clinic.
Oh no, he was up here taking care of my dog and my cats. And I found him on the floor in my apartment, in my house, duplex. Yep. So yeah, he's up here in Connecticut.
I got to say, as someone who's taken more than a few hospital trips via ambulance from your home, it must have been, when the ambulance was called and then, the EMTs come in and they get ready to put you on the gurney and you're like, no, 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 no. Guy on the floor. They're like, well, what? Not you? No, no, no. Guy on the floor. Okay, so your dad was rushed to the hospital and they think he might have a serious condition. um, your transportation or your mobility, I should say, is a bit limited. So, have you been able to
Yes.
visit him? Did you ride along with him to the hospital?
No, I haven't been able to do either. He hasn't been able to talk on the phone, and being on life support is not conducive to visitors. And it's a hell of a long walk from the parking garage to the ICU unit. I don't think they could put them farther away from each other, but they do. And it's a holiday weekend, and everyone visits their family on holidays, so it's a lot harder to get in the hospital.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, if you have a loved one in the hospital and Thanksgiving or Christmas rolls around, there's probably quite a few people taking up the parking garage, right?
Yep, yep. This time of year is very busy for the hospitals for both depression and health.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about the depression thing. Yeah, decent
Yeah.
point. Decent point.
So it's been hard for me to care for 3 dogs and my cats for the last few days. So we'll see what happens. I get an update like twice a week, or twice a day from the hospital. So they should be calling in a little bit. They usually call around, I don't know, between 9 and 11. But he hasn't eaten. He's on feeding tubes and sedated and ventilator and asking me questions that, No child wants to answer for their parent. Like, does your
Yeah, I'm
father
wondering
have
how
penile
is your
implants?
health doing? I'm sorry, say that again, Shannon.
I said, they asked me, does my father have penile implants? I said, I have no idea. That would not be a
Wow.
question he would share with me.
You know, I always talk about how everybody should have a friend. So if you, get hit by a car and just pass away, or you get hit by a car and get rushed to the hospital, they break into your house and erase your web browsing history. I always have to erase mine because I'm looking up terrible things that we're discussing. But I gotta
Yep.
also, when I update my friend to erase my browsing history if I get hit by a car, I gotta let him know I do not have penile implants, just in case they ask. I didn't realize that was
Yes, if
something
they
they
need to
do
give you an
ask, but
MRI, they need to know if you have penile implants or piercings. And I said, I don't know either. And I don't want to know. You could keep that as a surprise for
oh
me.
yeah, because that would get sucked into the magnet. Yeah, that would be really. They put me in there. All right, Lee's in there, starts spinning. All of a sudden, my boys just get stuck to the wall. Yeah, that's not okay. Now I understand. That's a good question. Hey doc, thanks for thinking of me. Piercings or implants? Okay. Well, thanks for that. I'm gonna remember that for a long time. So how is your health doing? You were sent home from the Beverly Hills Rehab Clinic after you had a health scare, and you kept getting rejections from your insurance, and you just eventually decided you didn't want to keep having to put so much time into it. You were sent home. Last time I heard from you, you said you were getting better. You were walking more than before, maybe not a lot, but you felt you were getting stronger. um, it's obviously hard to focus on your health when you're thinking about your father, but have you been able to make any progress since we last spoke?
No, not really. No. I I've been trying to take care of everything here and haven't been able to get myself taken care of. I
Have
figured
you
I'll
gotten more medicine? I think not just because of insurance, but I think you were saying you were like running out of medicine and had to get some more. Did that get taken care of?
nope. Nope. CVS put it back on the thing. I have to reorder all my refills again. So I didn't make it there in time.
Well,
So
do what you can. You don't need me telling you, but do what you can to get that medication back in your pocket, especially since when those subsidies perhaps run out, it'll be a little bit
right.
more difficult. So make sure you're all full as much as you can before you have to cross that dangerous bridge. Shannon, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and we can keep talking about other things in your life, not trying to push that aside. But we were just talking
What are
with
we talking
Bjorn over
about?
on Stereo, who's still with us, on a topic I'm sure a topic I'm sure you have some thoughts on. So, an Afghan, I have to wrap my head around this, an Afghan male who came to the U.S. under the special visa because he worked with the CIA during the war. So, something that is really unfortunate because now the Trump administration has basically paused all visa processing for anyone from Afghanistan, including these special visas for people who helped us out in that war. And they've also canceled ones that were already issued but had yet to go into effect. They've basically torn everything up and they're just taking a pause. We'll see how long that lasts. And I wanted to get to some details here about the specific man whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm sharing this over on my Twitch and Rumble streams. Here is a picture of the two National Guard troops he allegedly shot. The woman on the right has now died. I believe the man is still alive. I'm not sure what his condition is. And then to the right of them is a picture of this Afghan male. Ramanullah Lockenwall. I'm going to call him Lockenwall. That looks like his last name. His path from a village in Afghanistan to the corner in Washington, D.C., where authorities say he opened fire on two National Guard guard troops was forged by America's longest war. He was 5 years old when the U.S. military invaded after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. And as a young man, he enlisted with a, quote, Zero unit, an Afghan paramilitary force that worked with Americans. That connection appears to have given Mr. Lochinwal a ticket out of Afghanistan when the Taliban toppled the American-backed government in 2021, allowing him to flee with his wife and children. They began a new life in Bellingham, Washington, where he worked as a delivery driver and his children played soccer in the hallways of their modest apartment complex. On Thursday, the authorities were scrambling to understand what motivated Mr. Lochinwal to forego that new start, drive cross-country from Washington State to Washington, D.C., where officials say he fatally shot one guard member and critically wounded another outside a metro station. It was also unclear why he chose the street corner where the two Virginia National Guard members were patrolling on Wednesday afternoon. Officials say he ambushed them outside the Farragut West metro station, firing repeatedly at one guard member with the .357 revolver and then turning it on the other before he was shot himself. Currently, Mr. Lochinwal is under watch at a Washington, D.C. hospital where he is being treated for his wounds. He is being charged with 3 counts of assault with intent to kill while armed. President Trump announced the next day that Specialist Beckstrom had died of her wounds, which meant the suspect was now expected to be charged with first-degree murder. Mr. Lochinwal was raised in a village in the province of Khost, K-H-O-S-T, in southeastern Afghanistan, growing up in a country at war. At some point, he joined a Zero unit, according to a person briefed on the investigation. Zero units, which were formerly part of the Afghan intelligence service but operated outside the usual chain of command, were largely recruited, trained, equipped, and overseen by the CIA. These units specialized in night raids and clandestine missions. Taliban officials and human rights group described them as death squads. Wow. Okay, so maybe this is a guy who murdered a few people in the past. Human Rights Watch says it had documented several instances in which the units were responsible for extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances, indiscriminate airstrikes, attacks on medical facilities, and other violations of international humanitarian law. The CIA denies such allegations of brutality, saying they were the result of Taliban propaganda. Mr. Lochinwal's unit was based in Kandahar, a city that was devastated by bombings and assassinations during the war. According to an intelligence officer, one of his brothers was the unit's deputy commander. A childhood friend who didn't want to be identified because of Taliban reprisals says that Mr. Lochinwal had suffered from mental health issues and Zero units ended up playing a pivotal role in the U.S. military's withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. As the Taliban retook control, many members of the unit were evacuated with U.S. help. Many resettled in the Seattle area. I believe that describes this man as well. He was among the thousands of Afghans who were brought to the U.S. as part of a temporary program called Operation Allies Welcome. That program was put in place under President Biden to manage the immigration of Afghan nationals fleeing Taliban rule, including those who had helped U.S. troops. The program allowed about 76,000 evacuated Afghans to enter the United States for humanitarian reasons after the chaotic U.S. military retreat. The State Department approved Whatcom County, Washington, on the Canadian border, hey, Canada, as a resettlement location for World Relief, a Christian humanitarian org that helps refugees navigate their first 90 days in the U.S. Mr. Lochinwal ended up in Bellingham, the Whatcom County seat. Authorities say he lived there with his wife and several children. He received asylum from the U.S. government in April. For several weeks this past summer, he worked as a driver for Amazon Flex. His last delivery was in August. Neighbors say Mr. Lockenwall's family kept to themselves. And then the apartment complex that his family lived in was raided around 3 a.m. Thursday morning. So less than 24 hours after he allegedly shot those two National Guard members. People thought they were ICE, but they turned out to be FBI, and they had a search warrant. All right, that's everything we have now from the New York Times. But to wrap that in with what Bjorn and I were talking about earlier, the U.S. State Department sent out a cable on Friday basically telling every diplomat around the world, stop processing Afghan visas. If something issued, but it hasn't been printed, don't print it. So they did a full 180 on all that. And this is where I feel like you might have a comment. And Bjorn, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything. Always want to hear from you. I am okay with this. Afghanistan is a very dangerous country. Clearly, we wanted to help the people who had helped us and put their lives on the line. Varying degrees of that. And I bet we let a lot of people in who shouldn't be here, including this guy. And the first step to correcting that mistake is stopping the immigration program for all of Afghanistan and going back and vetting each one of these people. If this were France, it would be a different situation. We have very good relations with France. We do not have very good relations with Afghanistan. Our average typical American culture is much more related to European French culture. We have a lot more things that we agree on than we do with people from Afghanistan. I think it's fair that that can be brought up as well. And I have no problem with what I'm reading about right now. Of course, Trump is saying stupid things like he always does. But if you look at actual policy and what's happened, I have no problem with this. What do you think?
I think his extreme vetting didn't work. Because he made him a citizen under his watch.
Not a citizen.
Or a green card holder. He applied for asylum and was approved, so that's a green card holder who can legally buy a gun. So
he was brought over by Biden, and
right.
then he was approved. He received other he received other things from the Trump administration. But does it make sense? I would place more of this blame, if there is blame, certainly some on the Trump administration. But when they come in under the previous administration, you have to work with what you have. And if Trump had said all the Afghans, admitted under Biden just need to go home, people would have gotten really pissed off, and it would have created all of the things it's creating now, but back then when Trump came into the White House for the second time. And instead, they've rolled with what they had. Did they make a mistake on this guy? Clearly they did. But I don't know that that prevents them from trying to not make that mistake now.
Yeah, but when he first came into office, he's the one that said he has to extreme vet everyone. And he didn't, obviously. So he came in January, signed the executive order for extreme vetting, and still that guy still got approved in April. So
yeah, he was already here. He would have had to have done something to have not gotten approved once he was here, right? They would have had to have something stick out other than what they already knew from the Biden administration.
Right, but he said he was challenging every new person going for asylum.
Yeah, I don't remember that specific statement, but probably he did say something like that. Clearly, they did not.
Yeah.
You know, there
Well,
might have been no
that's my point.
information on this guy. There might have no information. No information may exist on this guy that they can go back and look at and be like, oh, okay, we made a mistake. As opposed to many school shooters, many mass shooters, they go back and they're like, oh, they shouldn't have been able to buy a gun. Oh, there were clear warning signs. We don't know. They may have missed something, or
Right.
maybe it didn't exist. Right. So we
Well, he
can
worked for the
blame the Trump
CIA.
administration.
He had to be pretty vetted to work for the CIA to get in.
You would think so. I don't know that we know that.
I'm
Apparently,
not
he
sure
did work
100%.
with a
Well, I mean, I
group
know he worked for
that
the CIA. I just don't.
he didn't work for the CIA. Apparently, it's being described that the CIA like worked with these special units, and they outfitted them. But I don't know that he like reported to a CIA officer. I don't know like what that relationship was. Uh, at
Right.
the very least, he was like CIA adjacent. We don't know some of these details. But maybe it should be that someone who engaged in that type of work, and whether or not it's true, these allegations that they committed crimes, you know, against international humanitarian treaties, maybe those people, despite the fact that they did help us, shouldn't be allowed in.
I wouldn't say they shouldn't be allowed in just because one person is bad. But I agree with you that we are much more aligned with France, Italy, Europe, like Britain, than we are with the Muslim world. So.
Hey, we got something there. Yeah, we got. Hey, we're meeting halfway. So that's the other component, is that not only is Afghanistan a terrible place for anybody who's not running the country, so anybody who's like not in a power position in the Taliban, we don't align with them the way that we do with other parts of the world. So Bjorn, earlier we had just mentioned some countries like, well, what if an Italian guy, you know, commits a crime? Are we going to stop letting people in from Italy? We're on the same page with Italy. You know, we're on the same page with a lot of countries that actually, there's probably not a lot of Italian immigration to the United States, but just name a country. You know, we're more on the same page in a lot of ways with a country like Venezuela than we are with Afghanistan. And look what, you know, the Trump administration is doing and saying about Venezuela. So I know that you have points that I cannot disprove. These are really good points, but I mean, if we weren't going to do this, what would be a more appropriate response? And Bjorn, once again, if you want to jump in, since you can't raise your hand to start talking.
Yeah, I was just going to say, um, it's interesting that this guy. Thanks for illuminating the fact this dude was on a zero squad. I've never heard of that. But if bro was like basically like a death squad guy, sounds pretty questionable. Anyways, on how that guy got vetted. But um, the other thing I was going to say is, if this results in just a pause and a look at like how we do this, I guess that's a little bit more acceptable to me than to saying like never can like Afghanis immigrate here ever again, or people who, you know, are already here. We shouldn't just kick them all out. So I think if like you say, if it's a pause versus a complete ban, I think those are two different scenarios. I'd be okay with the pause while you reevaluate everything, but a complete ban, I think, is too much.
Yeah, and that's the X factor here, is we don't know how long this lasts. It seems pretty across the board right now. And to go back to your point, and I was mentioning this to Shannon as well over on Twitter Spaces. You know, just because you helped us, I don't know that that should be the okay. You know, as long as we don't find anything in your background that we can specifically point to, come on in with your family, because maybe this was something that wasn't reported on a lot before. Maybe it was something that I just completely missed, like a lot of people, because, you know, there's just so much going on. But these zero units don't sound to be the type of people I would want coming to the country. So maybe that's a problem, is that, hey, you help us and then you do a bunch of stuff that messes with your mind. And then we go ahead and say, well, because your mind's messed up, you can't come into the US. So, we're basically causing this problem. But, if we have people doing things to help us out and that takes a toll on them, I think it's fair to include that in their visa application. These don't seem like red flags. Just across the board, but the more we find out about this guy, it seems like maybe he was someone who shouldn't have been brought in.
Sorry, we're turning in our points from the day, our value points for the children. If they had good behavior, they get points and they can exchange them for video time, money. So we're deep in negotiations, so I'm all distracted. Sorry.
Wow, that's an interesting system. Yeah, you go ahead and finish the calculation of those points, but I'd love to hear about that. Shannon dropped over on Twitter Spaces, not sure what's going on with her end. Obviously, she has a lot of things to deal with. She was mentioning she was expecting a call from the hospital about her father, so maybe that was what just happened. But just going to make sure I don't have a message from her. She sometimes messages me when she has to drop off. What's not to like about Shannon? All right, we're all caught up there. So, yeah, this is clearly a story that is going to continue to evolve. Assuming he doesn't die of his wounds in the hospital, which I have not seen any indication that that was going to happen, but he was shot. One of the two National Guard soldiers that he shot has died. If he dies, that really does complicate things, because I think as long as he's alive, I feel like we're going to learn from him. He may even start talking about his motivation, and if he tells us what motivated him, that can really affect this story. So just like what this pause with Afghanistan visa issuing, we're not quite sure where this is going to go. But again, and I feel like Bjorn and I found some common ground here. Currently, if we look at this as a pause rather than in Trump administration, and then if they get another Republican in there, continuing into that for the 4 years afterwards, or maybe 8 years afterwards, depending on how that turns out. A pause, I really think it's kind of hard to argue with that. It's kind of difficult to start trading off shootings. But if someone walks into a school and starts shooting and kills a bunch of students, or walks into a grocery store, or gets on top of a roof during a 4th of July parade, just some of the shootings that we've talked about on the show in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, well, we've dealt with that. And a lot of the time the argument goes on, how did the person get guns? It's usually a guy. So how did the guy get the guns? What was their motivation? But it's kind of, this similar cookie cutter thing we've gone through. I can't remember the last time someone shot National Guard or military of any kind. Certainly you have police ambushes, but that's something we're a little bit more used to. So this is about the worst thing that could happen to good, want to live in the United States Afghan nationals, because this really sticks out. It's a Republican in the White House, plus it's Trump. And these were National Guard units that have been in DC for some time now, but were very controversial and have remained controversial to this day. They actually did lower crime. They were effective. A lot of my liberal people on my side said that it wasn't going to do that, and it did, so they were wrong. And then they started arguing, well, even if crime is being lowered and this is effective, it's taking a psychological toll as people are seeing troops in the streets. Well, the DC National Guard is not going to leave anytime soon. I believe I've read that more troops are coming if they haven't gotten there already. And I think this, I don't want to say victory, but this is victory for Trump putting National Guard troops in American cities, especially DC, because it shows, again, they are effective at lowering crime. And now they're being targeted. So I guess you could argue take them out. It's hard to kill them if they're not there, but that's not how Trump's going to look at this. That's not how Republicans are going to look at this. I think a lot of people would not look at it that way. Whether or not that could be effective, I think more is going to be the answer here, and less is going to be the answer. Zero, in fact, is going to be the answer for Afghan nationals coming into the United States anytime soon. And again, I'm really pressed to disagree with, at least if we're calling this a pause. And then I assume the next step of this pause is going to be, we're going to move some resources into looking in at the people who came in since the end of the Afghan war, the chaotic U.S. withdrawal of forces and all that stuff that happened in the Biden administration, and the people who were continuing to move forward with the process here now under the Trump administration. It's unfortunate, but again, I think it's reasonable, especially if you look at Afghanistan versus other countries. And I guess maybe we could slide into other countries now, talking about Venezuela. There's a lot that's happened this week, despite it being Thanksgiving, and maybe you think, well, America's going to take a bit of a break. Unfortunately, that was not in the cards. It has been a pretty busy week, and we're just talking about two issues right now: Afghanistan / National Guard killing, and now perhaps jumping over to Venezuela. There's a bunch of other stuff too, but these are the big ones. Yeah, it's been a bit difficult couple of days. I think I have one of these stories up already. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's check in with fake President Trump. President's right here on the show. Mr. President, why have you decided to, I guess we'll call it a pause the issuing of visas to
I decided to suspend immigration from Afghanistan because I believe that the situation in Afghanistan is too unstable and unpredictable. I do not want to risk the safety of the United States by allowing people from a country that is experiencing a conflict to enter our country. I believe that this measure is necessary to protect the safety and security of our citizens.
Now that was probably more succinct and highbrow than we're used to from the President of the United States. But again, I'm having difficulty finding faults in at least the policy changes that have happened. All right, now let's bring up something here on Venezuela. So not connected, but still connected, I guess, a little bit because it's dealing with President Trump. And unlike the attack on these National Guard soldiers, which came out of nowhere, we've been seeing a ramp up with all the boats that have been blown up, as well as Trump's rhetoric on Venezuela. So let's check in with the BBC. So from 5 hours ago. And this is an interesting framing. Venezuela has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of making a colonialist threat after he said the airspace around the country should be considered closed. I remember, was it the Trump administration? I can't remember when exactly this happened, but sometime in the last like 5-6 years, some official from China retweeted or tweeted, "I can't breathe," talking about that horrible encounter between a black man and a police officer. I believe he was actually convicted in that man's death and is now in prison. Was it in Minneapolis? I can't recall. There were just so many of these. But China does a lot of terrible things to its own people. And yeah, sure, America has a lot of problems with race, but it's just, when Venezuela calls us something like a colonizer, or some Chinese official tweets out something about race relations in the United States, they do it because, well, the media jumps on it, and a bunch of people on the left, who often are, many titles, including activist, they go, well, they're not wrong. Whatever you think about Venezuela, I'm not sure this should be taken seriously, that we are colonially threatening. We are a colonialist threat. Losing my grammar here. The Venezuela's foreign ministry called Trump's comments another extravagant, illegal, and unjustified aggression against the Venezuelan people. That one makes a little bit more sense. But what's interesting here is the U.S. does not legally have the authority to close another country's airspace. However, Trump's online posts could lead to travel uncertainty and deter airlines from operating there. The U.S. has been building its military presence in the Caribbean, which officials say is to combat drug smuggling, like the boats they've been blowing up. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has dismissed U.S. claims of drug trafficking as an attempt to oust him, which probably, I think that, as opposed to the colonialist threat line above, Trump seems to just have it out for Maduro at this point. I'm not sure exactly why. I'm not saying Maduro's a good guy, but he just seems to have kind of latched onto that. So in a post on Trump's own Truth Social, to all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. So I get the airlines, I get the pilots, but he specifically mentions drug dealers and human traffickers. All right, so a wide audience here. The U.S. has also deployed the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford. That seems like a weird twist of fate, that the largest aircraft carrier is named after great American President Jerry Ford, and about 15,000 troops to within striking distance of Venezuela. The BBC here has a visual on how big it is. It's just a little shorter than the Empire State Building. It's a little larger than the Eiffel Tower. But the U.S. government insists that this deployment of the USS Gerald Ford, the largest by the U.S. in the region since it invaded Panama back in 1989, is only to combat drug trafficking. And on Thursday, while Trump was dealing with all of this stuff with the National Guard killing, he also warned that U.S. efforts to halt Venezuelan drug trafficking by land would begin, quote, very soon. U.S. forces have carried out at least 21 strikes on boats they say were carrying drugs, killing more than 80 people. However, the U.S. has not provided evidence that the boats carried drugs. I think that's like a technical issue there, but I'm going to go ahead and assume they're probably not blowing up boats for no reason. Call me crazy. The Venezuelan government, I would say, correctly believes the aim of the U.S. action is to depose Maduro, whose re-election last year was denounced by the Venezuelan opposition and many foreign nations as rigged. Oh, hey, we have Better Vibes over on Twitter Spaces. How you doing, Better Vibes? Friend of the show, patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporter. I have sent you an invite to be a speaker. Hope you can grab that. If not, no worries. Keep on listening. Great to have you.
Am I not speaker right now?
Hey, here you are. What's up, Better Vibes?
Yeah, I was like, it says mic is on. I was like, did it work? Cool. Hey, what's up, Lee?
How have you been? How are you doing? Happy Thanksgiving week. Hope you had a good one.
I had an okay Thanksgiving. Hope you had one as well. Um, Funny enough, my birthday was the day before. So it was just yeah, it was a good couple days. Um, and then followed by was 2 days off of work. So it's all of it just lined up perfectly. How was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was good. I've been doing more shows this week than I normally do, but not as many as I had hoped. I had a lot of time off, like many Americans, and I was lazy. I really watched a lot of football, enjoyed the time off, actually engaged in some exercise, which surprised even this guy. And then now, as the weekend is drawing to a close, I'm having to get ready for the next week, and I'm realizing that perpetual vacation does not exist in the United States. Better Vibes. Are you back at Walmart? Are you working at Walmart right now?
Yes, been working for Walmart for about a year.
And so tell me about that. How has that been going? Have people been shopping? Was there a big rush to the store this past week?
So when the government shut down, it's a barren wasteland, and then as soon as it opened up, I'm talking the second, uh, the whole store was just packed. You had big baskets of just grocery items. Lots of food went out the door. I work on the online pickup a pickup department, so um, I seen like triple the amount of orders going out my door. It was insane. And then Black Friday started to rear its ugly head around the corner. Um, Not as the biggest turnout as you would think. Like I want to say about 8-9 years ago, the line outside the door before the store would even open would be like, I don't know, so many feet long, like like literal yard long lines. Not this year. Not this year. It was just a handful of people waiting for Black Friday. So that was kind of weird to see, and they all congregated around the electronics department. No, like nothing else enticed them. So that was something weird to see this Black Friday. Um, yeah, but Walmart be Walmart, Walmart be corporate, Walmart be not paying enough. Same old, same old.
So when you mentioned that a lot more people started visiting the store when the government went back to work. Do you think that had to do with EBT, SNAP, food stamps?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Like multiple baskets filled with nothing but grocery items. Um, some still were walking out with with your bags of chips and your little Debbie cakes. So like I don't like people were saying that you could no longer pay for those items with EBT. I haven't seen it because um, I was still seeing those in baskets and whatnot. But yeah, it was all food items. Like after they were done, all the shelves were completely empty. Like it was like it was like when COVID hit and all the toilet paper was gone. It was like that, but everybody everywhere else.
Yeah, and then the people who showed up for Black Friday, they all wanted electronics, and there weren't as many people as in the past.
Right, right. And I would assume because like Amazon has really taken a foothold. And their Black Friday deals, you can just be lazy shop there. Um, and like I'm not gonna lie, some of the Black Friday deals that they were going on, um, I wasn't really impressed with what with some of the items that they were selling and for what price. Like like a digital PS5 for about $400. Like that's only 200 down. Like if they were selling it for like 200, then I'd be impressed. But I like Black Friday didn't feel like you get the crazy good deals. Nah, it just feels like another flash sale. So yeah, a few factors go into that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You have a great perspective being on the other end of retail rather than people who go to the store. You're working at the store. Um, I have a bunch of stuff in my Amazon cart rather than like put it in lists. I just keep it in the cart. I'm kind of lazy, I guess. But what I did notice was was it even before Thanksgiving? Certainly before Black Friday. I know increased in price, and I've seen that before. And I think what Amazon does, and I'm guessing other retailers as well, but maybe this is just Amazon, they will increase the price and then they will discount it. And even if they discount it to a lower level than the increase, the deal looks a lot better when a couple days earlier it was more expensive than it was a week before. And so I mentioned this because I agree with you. Even just a handful of years ago, I guess maybe pre-COVID, I think even during COVID when stuff was stocked, I remember Black Friday and Cyber Monday and just deals in general, like Amazon Prime Days used to be one day and now is 2 or 3 days every year. The deals were actual deals. And now I rarely buy anything during Amazon Prime Days. And I used to buy a lot. I certainly don't go to stores for Black Friday. So, like you were saying, you can be lazy now and everyone buys everything online. Even, I do buy stuff from Walmart.com, but I'm not going to the store. So maybe they have different deals in the store, but I'm guessing they don't because everybody is so into online distribution now. The deals don't seem to really be there as much anymore. And I think I saw some coverage the last couple of days. Some news articles from actual news entities were saying that the Black Friday deals aren't really much of a deal. We'll have to see what happens with Christmas shopping, but I gotta say, like the last couple of years, the best deals that I have found on items that I wanted, which usually, like you said, Better Vibes, are electronics. They just kind of pop up. I'll just notice that something's on sale. But it's not necessarily tied to a specific day. what I feel like Black Friday has become is more just they get you to buy things you're not necessarily looking for. So maybe just the items I'm always interested in are hard to discount. But if I do buy anything, it's usually I'm checking Amazon, I'm checking Walmart.com, whatever it is. And I just see something that looks like it's a really good deal. I wasn't looking for that, but since I was on the website and was digging in for deals on things I have been wanting to buy and was just like, I don't need it right now, I'll wait till the price goes down. That doesn't happen, but then other things pop up. Also, I buy from Costco online, and it's the same thing. Like usually I buy the same exact stuff from Costco, and it's very rarely on sale. Costco just kind of has prices. But then when I'm checking out, or if I'm just looking around, they have like weekly Costco deals that sometimes are good. It's things I never buy. And so I guess maybe that's the new deal, is that it's not necessarily what you really want. It's just something that is close enough, or like, hey, I'll try that. And then the deal may or may not actually be good, but it appears to be good because once again, Amazon seems to be increasing prices right before they do the discount. And so it's not really the discount you would think it is if you've been paying attention to that price. I want to talk more about this. Better Vibes. Stay with us. We got a message over on stereo. I'm going to play that in a moment. But to answer your previous question, I asked ChatGPT, yes, in general, you can use SNAP benefits, food stamps, to buy snacks such as potato chips or snack cakes from Little Debbie. The official guidance says you may use SNAP to buy other foods such as snack foods and non-alcoholic beverages, and accessory foods, which include chips, cookies, snack cakes, candy, ice cream, soft drinks, etc., are listed as eligible snacks/desserts under the program. It does not allow the purchase of alcohol, tobacco, hot prepared foods, non-food items like cleaning supplies, toiletries, etc., or supplements/medicine. The caveat, and we have talked about this on the show, I can't remember which states, it might be Nebraska was the first one. In recent years, a few U.S. states have begun pushing legislation or waivers to limit or ban the purchase of certain types of snacks and sugary drinks with SNAP benefits, but those are not universal rules that apply across all states yet. So, excellent. All right, stay with us, Better Vibes. Bjorn is over here on stereo as well. Let's check in with Woke Girl. Wow, nice name over on stereo.
I just want to say I fucking hate you, man. I loathe you. You're the biggest piece of shit that's ever fucking come on stereo. I fucking hate you. You're a fucking arrogant fucking prick who thinks he's right all the fucking time. Even when you display fucking evidence right to your fucking face, what do? You fucking block people. Man, go fucking suck your dick, you fucking piece of shit.
I wish I had not heard from Woke Girl. You know, Woke Girl, I can appreciate the fact that people have different opinions than I do. I can appreciate the fact that people have different experiences that I do not. I hope that I get that across, and I like hearing people with different thoughts than my own. But speaking of banning, you know,
That was.
I'm sorry, Better Vibes?
I just want to say that was not woke nor a girl.
Yeah, no truth in advertising there. Yeah, I mean, I'm very entrenched in my views. You know, most of our debates, our discussions are framed by facts. If you want to call them facts, in news articles, or I ask ChatGPT, which then references news articles or government websites. Like just now, I can click on a bunch of links from ChatGPT. So I do call out bullshit. When someone says something that's clearly false, I usually will tell them that if we've discussed it before and I'm aware that that is just completely false, or look up some news articles, ask ChatGPT, and then be like, what you just said was incorrect. I make mistakes all the time. So some stuff is you think you're saying one thing and it comes out another way. But, certain topics, it's very clear what's a fact and what's not. Now, when we were just talking about the stoppage of visas for Afghan nationals, it's a fact that the alleged shooter is from Afghanistan, and he received and his family received a special visa because of his service to the United States during that 20-year or so war. What's not a fact is whether or not that should have happened. What's not a fact is whether or not this one case means that there will be more, there's a risk of more. I think it does lead into those areas, but those are not facts. So, if you're looking for a show where people can say whatever they want and it's not challenged, I don't find value in that sort of program, to be completely honest. And that's why I don't run the show that way. But look at Joe Rogan. I mean, like, the number one podcaster / YouTuber. He actually became famous more because of his video than his audio podcast, but he's mostly framed as a podcaster. People go on the show all the time and just say things that are clearly not true. Joe Rogan says things that are clearly not true. Now, to his credit, he's not my favorite content creator. I don't really think he's very good at interviewing, but he does have everybody on his show, and I see value in that. The only thing that it takes to get on the show is to basically accept the invite. And he invites pretty much everybody. It's also a problem, but I do see value in the way he runs his show. If I ran his show, certain people probably wouldn't want to come on because they would know I would call them out. And that's why I'm not as popular as him. He also was, kind of a C+ comedian TV guy, and had that working for him. But, he's put a lot of work into his show, and it may not have been nearly as popular if he had tried to fact check people. I get that. I can see it's not for everybody, but I don't know. It's what I think is important. It's what I certainly prefer. And again, Stereo, Twitter Spaces, YouTube, there's a lot of stuff out there for everybody. So, I think it's a much better move on someone's part to find another show. But boy, Woke Girl, who's neither woke nor a girl, that was certainly an interesting comment. So I guess thanks for that much. Better Vibes, let's go back to you. So you're working at Walmart. Do you think that there's anything in particular that Walmart is not doing to entice more shoppers at the store? Like you were saying, maybe the Black Friday deals were not as good as they could be, or is this just more a sign of the times? People are going to be online rather than going to the stores, and maybe the shopping holidays that we used to think of having really good deals, maybe across the board, that's just no longer the case. What do you think?
They could be definitely listening to their shoppers a lot more, instead of just going off of like data and trends and whatnot, which like on paper does look like listening to them, but no, you're listening to numbers. When we were talking, when you mentioned earlier about like things that people are looking for, they literally had a bin full of Christmas tree, like Little Debbie Christmas tree lawn ornaments that you would stick into the ground for decoration. And I'm like, who wants this? Who? Like, why am I wasting time getting this item? Like who wants this? Um, as a matter of fact, when I was overnight uh, picking, which is like shopping for the customer, I only picked I only grabbed 5 of them. So out of this huge ass city that I'm in, only 5 people wanted it for online for this particular day. Only 5, and it was like like this is a waste of my time. This is a waste of their time. They could be buying something better. You know, like they really need to be paying attention to their customer base more. Um, and it kind of melds into like it's more about the times, because if their numbers and data is showing, they're getting more engagement through online orders and whatnot, then that's what they're gonna uh, lay their focus on, which which I think it's like kind of bad for business. Like if I wanted to really increase the revenue, I would do like online specific deals and in-store specific deals. So like exclusivity on both ends to maintain your engagement with the online customer base, and then hike up the in-store customer base. And thus it would require more people to work, and like more jobs will be created doing that. Like it's it's a mess. It's a mess, really. They're so engaged with their numbers and trying to cut costs and everything. It's heartbreaking to see, because like it like the magic of Black Friday or the magic of Christmas or whatever is just gone now. It's all numbers. On a side note, uh, like you and I, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but like that is definitely not enough to warrant like any kind of comments like that. So like, but like to all your other listeners, like, man, like, be cordial, have some decorum. This is certainly not it. Like, if you want to prove a point, you know it's better to wear it's better to prove a point wearing a suit than a clown costume. But yeah, that's just what I gotta say.
Thank you for that, Better Vibes, and your checks in the mail. No, I agree with you. As you've heard, and you and I, as you just pointed out, we don't always see eye to eye on every single topic. But the people who approach that, and like, I can't remember his name, but there was a guy on Stereo a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and he was really disagreeing with my opinions on Barack Obama being a middle of the road president who didn't accomplish much given what he had to work with. They had a full majority. He came in, he was basically God in politics, and he had so much potential. And I just think he wasted most of it. Look at the Affordable Care Act and how lukewarm that was, rather than giving us a public option like Bernie Sanders has always said would be cheaper, which is true, and would be better for millions of Americans, which I think the data also says is true. But this guy left me several, heated messages, and I played all of them. And, he was attacking me personally, but not in the way we just heard from Woke Girl. And I wanted to hear from him. I don't think he made very good points, but the fact that he was disagreeing with me was its own point. And it made me have to re-say things to try to explain my position, because as often is the case doing social audio, people say you said things that you did not say. They miss the nuance, or they're not paying attention, or they're just blatantly lying to bring you down. Whatever it is, I usually try to say, okay, well, I didn't say that, but this is what I did say, and I'll try to make this even more clear than it was before. And I find value in that. And it's interesting to have to defend your position. It's like anything. They say you learn from your failures more than you learn from your successes. If I was doing the show and everybody was agreeing with me, I wouldn't have to make sure I was focusing on the facts and really backing up what I was saying, even if it's an opinion, with facts, and say that these facts plus my opinion equals this, and I hope my opinion is informed by the facts. And my mind has been changed many times, and I have said things that were not true. People have called me out, and I tried to correct it as best I could live during the show. So thank you for that, Better Vibes. It's always great to have you on the show, and once again, your check is in the mail. So to go back to what you were saying, so when someone orders on Walmart.com, if I understand correctly, employees like you, Walmart employees, will then fulfill the order, but then someone else drives it to their house, right? So it's like a two-step process.
So how the process begins, and it works both for like event items and just your regular. It's a 4-step program, a 4-step process. They order it online, then they have in-house shoppers employed by Walmart going and doing the physical shopping for you, and then they bring it back to what's called the back room, and then they organize the orders in such a manner to where like if it's a pickup, to where you schedule for you yourself to go to the physical store and pick it up yourself. We have a special area for that. And if it's a delivery, which a third party delivery service such as Uber Eats and DoorDash and all them other delivery services would we have a special place for those. So like so when the pickup has been initiated, we gather your items that has been pre-shopped and pre-sorted out and everything, and then we just wait for you to park in our parking lot, and we go give it to you. Now, if it's a delivery, another step has occurred. We would hand your items to the delivery driver. There's an extra step of verification because there is a middleman, and then they would deliver your items to your door. So the reason we like overnight pick your event items is because again we're just servicing the online customer base a little bit further. Like Black Friday and stuff, like you also special items somewhere in the morning, and it was in a designated spot, so like it just feels more exclusive that way. Yeah, but that's how that's a little bit of how that works.
And then you were saying that you feel like they're emphasizing the wrong products. So is there any opportunity for like non-management hourly employees to offer some tips for positive changes to people who are making those decisions? Do they ever ask you that? Is there ever an opportunity to do that?
Like every day. You could bring up suggestions. Now whether or not they'll listen to you is a different story. But you could bring up suggestions, and if it makes good financial sense, like that, that'll increase your decision. So like if you really you've got to believe in your pitch, and then you pitch it, and then you got to like maybe show a little bit of like how it's good for business, and then they'll follow through. So like For instance, in my Little Debbie Christmas tree lawn ornament, it's in the exact same shape and like style as the actual cakes that you eat. Which it's neat, it's cute, I get it, but we only sold 5. Like, come on. It's like I would then need to bring up the fact that we only sold 5 of these online, and I don't think it was enough to warrant you know all the labor involved just to get this thing out. And then I would tell him, maybe it would be more profitable if we would have just focused on the bigger ticket items and reduce them even more, make it more enticing for people to bust down our doors. Um, because for a Walmart employee who loves getting paid by Walmart, I would certainly want to see somebody fight over a TV or two.
For the online deliveries? Like, do you only speak up on things you think are really important versus just stuff that they're probably going to do anyways? How do you decide when to make a comment?
So uh, I try to I try to make a comment, like for both the customer and the worker, because there's certain things that they do that is just like really making it unnecessarily hard to for the worker, for the associates to do their jobs. So like I try to bring that up as much as possible, because honestly they don't pay you enough to deal with all that. So like they could be a better company and just make quality of life a little bit better. um for example, there's uh, the staging area for hot foods. Like you can order our rotisserie chickens online. Our hot rotisserie chickens. You can order the chicken sandwiches, the egg rolls, things made by our deli. You can order all that online and have it either delivered to you or just do pickup. But the staging area is in Delhi, and and what staging is, it's like just putting it away until they get here. And Delhi is on the opposite side of the store of where the department is. So whenever the order pops up, we have to walk all the way there and all the way back, and like it's a total waste of time. And like they just need to put a hot box where we work, and that'll improve the quality of life for my workers, for my associates, tenfold. I know everybody would enjoy that. Uh, and then when it comes to like business sense, because that affects bonuses and whatnot, and we do get bonuses every year. Like I would try to encourage that, so to increase my bonus at the beginning of the year.
So you said you had some time off, if I remember correctly. Was Walmart open on Thanksgiving? Is that a store to store decision? Is that a national decision?
Uh, I think it's like a regional decision. Things I know for certain my region decided to just be closed for Thanksgiving. Some other regions might stay open until a certain time, or just remain open. But as far as my region goes, I know it's they close for the holidays now. Um, so like I I technically worked for Thanksgiving because I did the overnight uh, uh, Black Friday shopping, which only happens like for a short amount of time. It's not a permanent position. It's a as business needed kind of thing. So like I still technically worked Thanksgiving because of that, but it was totally voluntary. I could have just like stayed home or not volunteer for that. So like I could have had things like the entirety of Thanksgiving off. But then uh but then I just Fridays and Saturdays just happens to be my days off. So it all works out. They're most
So
likely
then,
going to be closed
since
for Christmas.
I'm sorry, continue.
They're most likely going to be closed for Christmas, and that's all I was going to say for that.
So since you technically worked on Thanksgiving because you worked the overnight into Black Friday, were you paid time and a half for that full shift, or is it only time and a half until midnight of Thanksgiving?
I got time and a half, plus the overnight working incentive. So I know I got a big chunk of change working overnight in that one shift. It's stacked. So I got time and a half, and then that with the overnight incentive. So it was like the overnight incentive pay, which is a little bit above 14. I think it's almost 15 an hour, and then that plus time and so that plus time and a half, and then I put in some PTO to cash out. So I swam in some good money there.
And when you mean cash out, was it PTO that was going to go away, or did you just decide to use it all around that time because your weekend just happens to be your day off?
Yeah. It was it was some PTO that I had lying around, and I was just like, okay, just cash it out, get some extra money.
So I know a lot of stuff changed with stores being open 24 hours a day or being open on holidays during COVID. You know, the whole thing for every brick and mortar business really did change through COVID. And then you had higher incentives, higher hourly wages because people didn't want to go back to work. You know, we've discussed all that on the show. Has that changed on the Walmart end of things? Has that meant that it's better to work for Walmart now? Or as you noted, since Walmart, like many, companies, but specifically Walmart is always trying to save money, with all those changes, has it gotten worse over time?
It wouldn't certainly be, solely due to closing on the holidays or closing overnight. Like it's like the things that Walmart does great, they do fantastic. But the things that they could improve on, like I wouldn't solely put the blame on being closed on like during the hours they would normally be open. They well, like if you want to save money, fine, but you could implement changes that make a lot more sense. Um, like if you go into a Walmart and you see an employee that doesn't seem well trained, it's more likely because they're not. The training that they used to do back in the day was a lot better than what they have now. But it was long and tedious. Like you would spend a week just watching videos, and then you were allowed to go out on the sales floor. But what they wanted to do was to streamline that process. It's like, okay, spend maybe 1 or 2 days, watching videos, and then you're good enough to go out on the sales floor. Um, which is okay, fine and dandy, but like make all your training videos in order, and like maybe structurize your training a little bit different so that you are actually applying what you were learning that day. And so and all of that is just to streamline the work so they can actually have freight moving, sales as sales being finalized, a lot quicker. So it makes them more money and it saves them more money by doing that. Um, but but to the detriment of like a lot of your associates just walking around just making the best educated guesses on everything. So like yeah, it's certainly like not 100% to blame on just closing on the holidays or it's just bad implementation on I don't want to say good plans, just mid-tier plans. It's just bad execution on things.
Is theft something that you see or is talked about, and that could be from customers or that could be from a Walmart employees? I ask because I'm wondering, as the self checkout becomes more prevalent everywhere, I believe Costco had self checkout. They got rid of it, and then they started phasing it back in recently within the last however many years. And I always assumed when a store got rid of the self checkout, or sometimes you go into stores and the self checkout is clearly theirs, so they've paid for all that infrastructure, but it's turned off and they don't let you use it. And in certain cities, you'll have a store that you're used to in another city, and maybe where you're from will have self checkout, or maybe even the city hypothetically that we're talking out will have self checkout, but in certain areas they won't. So, how much do you hear about it? How much is theft talked about in the Walmart ecosystem, if you will?
Um, so the term that Walmart likes to use is for any kind of loss and theft would it goes into that umbrella term. It's called shrink, and it is so embedded in the culture that like they even have a board in the back room. Not in the online pickup back room, just the back room in general for all associates, where they would take pictures of recently prevented shrink or theft, and like you see pictures of like TVs, ribs, like pork ribs, other food items, AirPods, things like anything, and it constantly updates. Yeah, uh, we are constantly being vigilant of theft, um, and they like every like I want to say like if like as the holidays come up, the more I see police at my store. So like the police have been showing up at a higher frequency. I do see it die down a little bit, after the holidays, but I'm gonna say like once every 2 weeks I'll see policemen arresting people for stealing from my store. Um, yeah, it is a big issue for Walmart. Um, like, and if you would ask me, I don't think self checkout like is like the biggest blame for it. Like it's just another way they can steal. Like there's like because you could do things like ticket swapping, which is like holding like holding a cheaper barcode under an expensive item to make it look like you scanned the damn thing. But they have like technology that fights against that. So like there are safeguards. It's just people will just take things out of the boxes and just put it in their pocket and walk out. I've gone into the restroom on multiple occasions, seeing empty boxes of like headphones, uh, dude wipes, and all of this. In what was it? Diapers? Yeah, I think I seen like an empty bag of diapers just there, and it's like yeah, I think self checkout is just not the one culprit, but theft is definitely highly looked into.
So you mentioned police officers. Are they responding to like a call that a shoplifter has been caught? What's the role of a Walmart employee to prevent theft versus, you know, I think in the past employees were more likely, like 20 years ago, were more likely to like tackle you if you were taking stuff out, but we've played them on the show. I forget if you were there or not. There was a video of people coming out of like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something, and they just had a full cart and they were wearing bandanas over their mouth like they were bank robbers. And, you know, the employees were like, hey, you're going to pay for all that? Like, what are you doing there, guy? And then they just walked out because we looked it up, and whatever store it was public knowledge that they had told employees, like, it is not your role to physically prevent theft. You are not supposed to stop people from stealing in that way, but you can talk to them and you can make note of the fact they need to pay for things. So, in your experience, and maybe this has changed over time, but what is the role of theft prevention for an employee versus when you have to get the police involved? And then are there police officers who just come into Walmart? Do they only respond to calls? How does that all play out?
So per policy, uh, okay, this is a little bit how it works. So you have your associates who are coded as unauthorized associates, and then you have your team leads, and then coaches and whatever that are coded as authorized, meaning they are allowed to do more. So like if like as an associate, you can't be accusatory. You can't you can't be like, oh, you are stealing. Like you all you can, like literally all you can do is just is talk to them and just ask for the receipt, and like if they fail to present a receipt, then you get the manager, and then the manager can, you know, sit down with them, grill them, talk to them, ask them questions, and all of that, and then provide further investigation. Like in no way, shape, or form can an associate ever tackle a customer. Like that is just no, you can't. Like the associate might get fired for that. Um, uh, the we do have certain people that walk through the store, that just observes shoppers. They will they'll do what is necessary in those circumstances. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to give too much away here. But that's a little bit that's a little bit how it works. Oh, one final thing, like there's this thing called the last point of sale, which is out the door. Like once you're out the door, they can't really do anything to you. So like if they want you, they have to catch you before you leave. But that's all I'm trying to say without giving too much away about it.
So would it be fair? Am I on the right track to say that if I walk into a Walmart and I grab some potato chips, or I walk into a Walmart, because I know in electronics a lot of stuff is accounted for, and you have to, even in like the pharmacy area, some of the stuff is behind glass and you have to like press a button and someone comes and unlocks it, and then I've had them hand me the item, so then, you know, it's on me to go pay for it. But whatever the case, whatever any item is, if it's in my hand and I'm walking around the store, clearly you would expect that I would eventually go and pay for that in the self checkout or go through one of the normal lines. But if I just take that and start walking out the door, like I could just do that, because unless there's a police officer already there for some reason, and this is outside of Walmart, I think most places, if not all places now, they're not going to physically stop you. So do people do that? Like, do people not even go into the bathroom and take headphones out of a box and put them on their neck so it looks like they walked in with them? Like, do people just walk in, grab something, and walk out? Or am I missing a step? Is there some sort of loss prevention in play there? You don't have to mention anything you don't want to mention, but is there some other step I'm missing? Or in theory, could people just walk in, grab something, and walk out?
And in theory, with everything that's in play, that could happen. In theory, that could happen. Like obviously, like if you want like a deck of playing cards, you can probably pull that off. But you definitely ain't pulling that off with like a 65-inch 4K Samsung TV. You're not gonna pull that off. But like if it's something small, like maybe maybe some Aleve or you know, a bundle of forks, you could probably do that. Yeah, but like they're not just gonna tackle you. Like all the videos you see of, you know, associates or whoever, you know, grabbing baskets and whatnot, they're doing it wrong. That's not how you're supposed to do it. I think that's all yeah, that's all I'm about to say with that, because I'm giving way too much away.
Yeah, that's the Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. Great movie, by the way. So yeah, so it sounds like for anything other than a small item, if we just group it that way, there's something in play to prevent someone from walking out with a, well, you wouldn't walk out, but have it in your cart and like push it out. There's something at play there to prevent that, which makes sense. Um, and I know that there was this big push in many cities across the country to, I don't want to say decriminalize, but for lack of a better term, decriminalize shoplifting like under a certain amount. But then you had all those videos that we played on the show previously where people were just walking out of a home improvement store with really expensive items. And, you know, that went viral across the board. And I think several major cities kind of rethought, if not reversed, the we're not going to care about shoplifting. And a lot of stores like Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, those types of stores, they ended up just closing. I think we've talked about it on the show previously. There were stores in urban areas that were just like, we're just leaving because we have so much theft, so much shrink, as you were saying. And certainly, you know, municipalities didn't like that, so I think they had to adjust the rules. So it is, and clearly it's risky to steal at all, but because there's video everywhere, but also like big items. So it sounds like Walmart has something in play to try to prevent at least the biggest theft. We can move off of Walmart. It's always fascinating to hear your thoughts. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, and we're talking about like check us receipts at the door. If like if it's not in a bag, like if everything, let them go. Now, like you have to see somebody with a bag of chips. As much, you know, as that small item, you know, like a $200 to $300 pair of AirPods. That they're gonna definitely get down your throat for. So it's like what you see in terms of like is what's making you check that receipt. So it's about like just using your eyes and trying to prevent that streak as much as possible. Because if you're out there in the front door and you really want to be gung ho and check a receipt, you're going to have a line starting from the front door and ending to the back door. No exaggeration, by the way. So yeah, you just got to utilize your best judgment for.
So moving away from Walmart, it's been a while since we've had you on the show. Has there been anything lately that's had your attention, or anything even in the past several weeks that came up that you didn't have a chance to discuss? You know, we had the shutdown, and then government reopened, and you saw a huge influx of people into your Walmart store. And you talked about how a lot of that was groceries. So that seemed to be tied into SNAP, EBT, food stamps, and the resuming of the aid that I think it was 1 in 8 Americans, was relying on. So, yeah, anything else on your mind? We were talking about the killing of a National Guard member in Washington, D.C. 2 were shot, 1 died. They have the alleged shooter in custody. He's an Afghan national who had a special visa for him and his family because he worked with U.S. forces. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of news. Where do you want to go, Better Vibes?
Man, there's been a lot happening since last time we spoke. A lot of ICE, a lot of immigration that's been going on that I've been disagreeing with. The Trump tearing down the White House or the West Wing or East Wing. I forget which compass direction it was.
East Wing. Yeah. One day they just
Yeah.
tore down the East Wing of the White House. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I want to talk about that a little bit, because that really peeves me off. Because like, one of the biggest gripes about, and I'm Native American, one of the biggest gripes about the white man is like a lot of the things that we held sacred were torn and destroyed about to the white man. It's like the white man, the colonizer, they held nothing sacred but their own. Well, I can't even say that now, because this is their house, their white house. They have their white history in there, and cool. Like, I know what it feels like to have some of my history taken away, so I don't want it to happen to you, because I know how much that sucks. But they did it to themselves. So you colonizers, y'all don't make no damn sense. Like, y'all hold nothing. Colonizers hold nothing sacred. They'll tear anything down. Like and before Trump's second term, like, there was this mass propaganda like going around with all the YouTubers that I watch, saying, "Oh, you're not looking at Trump like logically. Like, you got some deranged syndrome, like being too damn biased about the guy." Well, his second term happened and this shit happened. I was like, nah. It just confirms everything I say about the guy. It's just the dumbass and a dumbass in a dumbass suit. I don't know. What do you got to say about that?
So this is the problem with Trump. Everything he says is terrible, and the way he handles everything is terrible, right? But certain things of his administration, some of which you just mentioned now, so the tearing down of the East Wing and then ICE raids, we can attack each one of those separately. Let's start with the East Wing. Once again, Trump is terrible. He handled it really terribly. But if you actually look at what happened, I'm not really against it. And I think that as long as they don't screw up the construction, which once again, maybe they'll do that terribly, but let's just assume that they handle the rebuild of the East Wing and the expansion of the East Wing. I think 20 years from now, it's going to be great. So the idea behind the East Wing was that they had several plans that they put out, and each plan that they put out did not mention the demolishing of the East Wing. It was about adding to it or building something like right next to it that may or may not have been connected to the White House. And then one day the bulldozers showed up and they just tore it down. So terrible. But the plan that they've stuck with, I don't think it's changed substantially. The plan they've stuck with since the bulldozers showed up, which was a terrible look for America, is that they're going to build, I kid you not, it's 999 seats. I can't believe they won't fit in another seat somewhere just to call it 1,000, but it's 999, and it's an enormous ballroom. And so if that is built and then it's all patched up and looks really nice, I think that's a win. On top of that, all of the money for this construction is being paid for by Trump. And we looked up the companies. I think Meta, so Facebook, gave money, and a couple other companies were mentioned, but those are just the ones that were able to be written about in news stories. So whatever it is, it's all private money, Trump and other companies, and you can worry about the influence that is being given through the exchange of that money. And I certainly do worry about that influence. Don't get me wrong. But there's lots of ways both the Republicans and the Democrats accept millions upon millions of dollars, and this is just another one. So that being the case, I look at this 20 years from now, the White House is going to have this enormous ballroom. It's going to be a place where they can hold parties, whatever they want, in a way that they cannot do currently. It's just not possible. The East Wing had some sort of ballroom situation, but it was a very low capacity. And when we talked about this on the show, we went and we looked at the history, and the White House has changed quite a lot. It actually wasn't white at first. That came many years later. And they used to have these giant parties with hundreds of people, like close to 1,000 people. And the furniture would get torn up. There'd be mud everywhere. They used to smoke cigars. Like everybody was smoking, not like Arnold Schwarzenegger was just there smoking a cigar. Like everybody was smoking back in the day. And so they used to be able to have these parties, which makes sense because they had less security concerns. They had less occupancy concerns. You didn't have to worry about the fire code and things like that. And so just now in 2025, you can't do that anymore. Do we specifically need that at the White House? No, I don't know that we specifically do, but they do hold many large gatherings in the DC area. This is public knowledge. And they have to rent out hotels. And that's got to be a lot of money. And if you think about it from the security end of things, what's more secure? Trying to use hotels in the DC Metro, and maybe you get good at it because you've been using the same ones, but it's not the White House, right? It's not your home turf. I like the NFL. Teams are almost always better at home than they are on the road. Sometimes you have these weird things where teams are better on the road, but usually the team has better odds of winning the game in its own home stadium, especially if it's a home stadium that has some advantages, like it's a dome. If it's Denver, it's mile high, so your field goal kicker, his leg goes further in Denver than it does in Florida, right? It's just the way the atmosphere is thinner up there. So to wrap all this up in a bow, I look at the East Wing expansion as it was handled terribly. They were not transparent with the plans. But I think, whoever lives in the White House basically has the power to do whatever they want with the White House. And we've seen that from president to president. Things change, things go back, solar panels are installed, they're removed. Now, Trump, like with everything, he went further than everyone else. But generally, from what I looked at, I think what he did was legal. It was just handled terribly. And 20 years from now, I think it's going to be great to have this enormous ballroom. And he even, surprisingly for Trump, went as far as making sure that it apparently doesn't cost the US taxpayer any money, because he raised funds. And again, we can worry about, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But yeah, I think overall it was a net positive. I just worry that maybe they're going to screw up the construction and it's going to change. The plans are going to change again. But it's an eyesore. It's a public information nightmare. But I don't have a problem with it. If we get another president in the White House who's a bit more reasonable and they want to do some things, I'm all for it. In fact, I think the White House should be even bigger. Push the gates back, take over a road. We should have a lot more stuff at the White House. I mean, we're the richest, most powerful country in the world. Why not have all these things right at the White House? It makes sense to me. I know it breaks the precedent. You talked about history, certainly ruins all that. But I'm not a stickler for old stuff just for the sake of it being old. And if you look at the White House has constantly changed. In fact, it's not recognizable the way it is now versus when it was first built. So for all those reasons, I have a lot of things to criticize Trump on, and I'll never bring up the demolishing of the East Wing and how all that was handled. Really quickly, Bjorn is back with us over on Stereo. Bjorn, if you want to at any time, throw in, because you cannot raise your hand on Stereo. I'm talking with a great guy, friend of the show, Patreon supporter, Better Vibes, over on Twitter Spaces. Better Vibes, do you have anything in reply to what I just said about the White House?
So certainly when looking into historical items and objects and stuff, like maintaining its stature closest to the original. The reason, like there's a reason that is more more valued both sociologically and economically. Like if you restore a car, and you don't use original parts or anything, it depreciates the historic value, and and thus it depreciates its economic value. And that happens for a reason. It's because because it is our history, and it is a reminder of of times gone by, and like there's a whole bunch of stone and just knowledge that is curated and tied to these specific items, and the White House is no different. I do acknowledge that the White House has undergone many many renditions, but like maybe adding an ornament here and the color, it is in stark like the contrast with 2 minutes to this whole big room. Like it's something unnecessary that does not need to be added to the history of the White House. And me as a native, it's like I see how sacred things have been torn down and demolished and forgotten about. But me as an American, who loves his Constitution, who loves his freedom of speech, who loves this country, for as much as I possibly can, because I am an American. there's I'm left in a position, to hold, things sacred when the colonizers fail to. So just because just because colonizers can't hold things sacred doesn't mean I can't. So it's all about continuity. It's all about it's all about maintaining the life's lessons, the wisdom, the history, the players who are a part of that history. I don't know. I'm no White House expert, but there could have been great figures that have walked the halls that are now been destroyed. And that kind of and that kind of energy is just gone now. The important decisions or inspiration could have been drawn from the halls that have been knocked down. That's all gone now. I don't think we keep things old for the sake of being old. There is a lot more tied to that.
Yeah, and that's the real issue is that just like so many things with the Trump administration, I don't pretend that Trump can't have a good idea every once in a while, but the way they handle it, if they had wanted to build a 999 person ballroom and just attach it to the White House, and like I said, like knock down some gates, expand, like take over some roads and replant some grass, like I'm all for that. But there doesn't seem to be a reason why they had to demolish the East Wing just to build over it. I think a lot of people like you felt like keep it, and adding rather than subtracting is a very different equation. So yeah, I will agree with you there. It is news debate. We got Bjorn joining us over on stereo again. Apostate Nate was just with us. I sent him a message. He had to take a call, so he'll be back hopefully soon. We had Shannon earlier in the show. She was expecting a call about her father, who unfortunately is in the hospital. So maybe she'll join us again as well. I'm not sure where to take the show now. So Better Vibes, if you want to give us another direction, or Bjorn, you're joining us again. Oh yeah, Bjorn. Something you mentioned earlier that I'd love to hear a little bit more on. You do a point system with your kids each day, and how they act throughout the day gives them some reward or not some reward. By the end of the day, you said you had to like tally some points. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Once again, Bjorn and his wife may be the best parents in these United States. Is this something you guys came up with on your own? Did you not reinvent the wheel and grab this from some sort of parenting resource? It sounds like something. Did they do this to me in elementary school? I feel like we may have had something like this in elementary school. Whatever the case, it's a little fascinating to me if you want to give us some more detail.
Yeah, I think for us it was, I think our prior we had, whenever there's behavior modification that needs to occur, oftentimes it's like, hey, it's like a general, like, you can get some, whatever positive thing that we're going to do is like maybe get 15 minutes of video or whatever. But, it's kind of like a little bit of a vague positive sort of thing, for sometimes hard to conceptualize. And it's easier in the moment to say, well, I kind of want to keep doing this, like, thing, whatever I'm doing, in terms of like the way the kids are thinking. And so then eventually the only resort is like, okay, well, you're going to lose privileges, which is a threat. That's vague. Or you're going to go to time in right now. And oftentimes time in is fine, but it's also like, can be disruptive to whatever you're doing. Because like in the mall, you're trying to like shop. It's like you have to stop and like set them down, wait some random spot. And so basically, there's kind of like a running point system for the day. And, if they do something good or listen, then you get a +1. And if there's a not listen, there's a fight or something, it's -1. And then at the end of the day, we see how much points they got, and they can trade that in for, video time at the end of the day, or they can cash it in for like. So that's what we've been doing. It's like nice. It's not so like, it's not as like as extreme as like, okay, you've lost all video for tomorrow, which is like an extreme like thing, or like, you must stop, sit right now. So it's like a little bit more minor, but it seems to be more effective in the moment because it's like, oh, that's +1, oh, -1. And it's like, it's maybe not as big. We can still like pull out the time in if something like nature happens, like, violence occurs or something like that, some other sentinel event. But, it's like a little bit more clean. So anyways, that's kind of the basics. We have an
So
app
are you
that
like
helps
carrying
track.
around a notepad throughout the day, or like you sit the kids down and tell them throughout the day that's a +1, that's a ±?
Oh, there's an app for that, bro. Yeah, no, there's these like chore. We basically are using a chore app where like we can just use that as our little tracker, and then it's the coins, kids' coins. And in the future, whenever they have their own devices, like 25 or whatever we decide we're going to give them a phone, then they can enter their own pluses and say, oh, I did this chore, I did that chore. You can assign chores to them in this app, but we're just kind of like using it as like the point tracker at this point. But in the future, you could expand it and give them access, and they could report to the app that they did their chore or something.
You mentioned something, I know you and I have disagreed on, instead of saying homeless, like houseless or people experiencing homelessness. You mentioned something that made me think of that. I always heard of it as a timeout. You said time in. Is it the same thing? It's
Yeah,
just been reworded, or are these different concepts?
it's a little bit different. We're hippie Portlanders, so we got to have a little woke in our behavioral education. No, so like the idea is that a timeout is like you remove them from like society, like go to your room and close the door, and you have to stay there for 30 minutes. It'd be like a timeout. Like, and basically, like you'll have no social interaction. Time in is like you're gonna like sit down here, and I'm gonna be here with you emotionally in case you need it. So, and you're not like isolating them, so they're still like within eye shot or earshot or visual range, so you can be there. So you're not like completely like abandoning them. So it's like a softer timeout, basically.
And so are you still using both of these, or do you try to lean on the time in and only go to the timeout when absolutely necessary?
We don't ever do timeouts. We only do time ins. So they're always like in the room. We don't like send them to the room and close the door or anything. So only time ins, basically. That's all we do. And now the point modification sort of thing, that was kind of a more recent thing.
I know your children are
We
young,
tried like
and if,
so.
or I'm sorry, continue, Bjorn.
Oh, I was just gonna say we tried like this other thing where we had like these paper tickets and things that we would give them like these paper tickets if they did good, or like if they start the night with so many tickets and then they come out of their bedroom at night and they're losing them. But it's really hard to keep track of the physical objects. So the app has worked better for us.
Yeah, plus young kids, you're gonna get like tickets handed back to you that have like weird liquids on them or something. Like, where was this ticket? Your kids are young, and if you've been doing this, since they were able to walk around and talk, maybe you wouldn't have anything to compare it to. But are you finding this effective? Is this something you implemented versus something that was done in the past? Have you seen a positive change, or is this just like most parenting, like you're doing it until you have to do something else?
Yeah, I mean, time ins have been pretty pervasive. their whole life. But sometimes like go to time in and the kid runs away. Then what do? You tackle them, you drag them over. And so the goal is to try to be like less physically, A, not corporal punishment, and B, less like parenting through like intimidation. Because that's scary when me, a large man, is hovering over my 4-year-old. Screaming at them is not the goal. But, emotions can be heightened when kids are like not listening or not doing the things. So like, it's try like, how do we like redirect an emotionally safe place is kind of like the goal. And so, yeah, we've used time in whole lives and it's been fine. We've never done any like spanking or anything like that. And they're great. And if you look at the research, there's no real benefit of spanking over time ins or timeouts in terms of like kids like behaving better. But there definitely is evidence of increased anxiety and increased violence amongst the kids if you are, whacking them. So we definitely followed the research and the guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics on that one.
So if you've been doing this, again, not criticizing, but it's like if you change your exercise routine and you notice a positive or negative change, then you have something to compare to. Are your kids? Would you say like do they do better compared to like your friends' kids? Like, is there any way you can compare this? Or like you were saying, is it more like, okay, well, maybe kids will behave if you spank them and maybe they'll behave if you do a time in, but then you don't want to be giving your children memories of you spanking them, associating you with physical pain. So is it more like, okay, they're probably going to act similar with all these different methods, but this is just the ideal? Do you see any positive differences between other children of similar ages that you're familiar with who maybe have a different parenting style at home versus the one you've just described?
I mean, I think all of our friends' kids are all like wild monkeys at the end of the day. So, I don't think that there's grand differences. I feel like we're actually maybe a little bit more strict in terms of like how quickly it's like, how quickly do you whip out the time in? I think that's maybe the difference is like, what point do you like say, oh, this is where we stop? And maybe other people who are, permissive have maybe some more or emotional problems, I think, than we do. But I think that's also pretty subjective. I think overall, everybody's kind of the same. I mean, our kids are like just a little bit wild monkeys anyways, because the parents are as well, because we're both, I think everybody has ADHD in our house. So, whatever. So we're doing it drug free and trying to do it. And I think it's also hard because, just like anything, there's going to be some minor differences between parents. There's going to be, not consistency because, consistency is hard as anything. And the kids see those like little soft points and press on them. And so, sometimes it's just like you got to like reboot and say, okay, we're gonna realign, and here's the new thing of the day. This is gonna be novel, and it'll work for a while, and then it's kind of like then either we don't follow through or the kids tire of it or don't respond to it, so you kind of have to like reinvent the wheel. So I think it's also evolving as they get older. Then it's like what works and what doesn't work, and there's an interplay between the two, and what situation are you in, what's going to work. So it's kind of like, what is going to be working in the situation that you're in at the developmental stage. It's kind of like a moving target. It's like, I think every parent does, tries the best and hopes they aren't like emotionally damaging their kids. At the end of the day, just tell them you love them a lot, and hopefully that, mitigates any sort of like social anxiety and trauma that they're experiencing through our not always great parenting.
So as you were saying, as your kids get older, and even now they're kind of realizing some of the opportunities maybe in how their dad treats them versus their mom, and so that maybe they do certain things in front of one parent or the other. If I understand correctly, you said that it's a daily sort of point system. So have your kids figured out yet that they could be like really bad on one day and then the slate is wiped clean and the next day it's a new day? Because then you'd be like running a bank if your kid goes, like -5 points. If you have to keep track of that, roll it over to the next day with compound interest or something. Has that come up yet? Because that's exactly where my mind went.
Oh, mine too. I'll be like, oh man, I can handle a few negatives because I did a lot of positives. No, but it's a relatively new system for us, so it's like pretty novel. It's still like working really well. I suspect in the next 3 to 4 months it'll probably not work as well as it does currently. But then you can also like start changing the rules, and you can do other things. It's kind of like printing your own currency. It's like, okay, we'll do 5 points for this thing instead of just 1 point, and maybe that will be motivating. But then the whole system breaks down. You have hyperinflation, and it all just falls apart. So we'll see, and then we'll have to invent something new. So who knows? We'll see how it goes.
Something that I'm just seeing over on Twitter from a recent show we did a couple days ago, or no, maybe it was before. I think I did a show like the day before Thanksgiving and then also one last weekend. My mind is mush. I'm Joe Biden, everybody. But then let me know what you think about this as well. Better Vibes over on Twitter Spaces, and leave a voice message on stereo if you want to comment. I don't think you were part of the show when Shannon brought up there are new regulations on like what master's degrees or just what degrees in general are considered professional. And the one that's no longer considered professional, which means you can take out less government loans. And then, therefore, once you finish your degree, if you have a position that gives you relief on those loans after a certain amount of time, they can only forgive the loans you take out. So if you take out less loans, in the end, it's diminishing that return on if you work in a special area or whatever it might be. So like nurses are no longer considered professional. And I know you work in the medical industry in the Pacific Northwest. And so that specifically, it sounds like you've heard about this. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. The whole thing is just silly. Like they didn't just limit so there's like different limits now that Trump has imposed on student loans for professionals and non-professional degrees, and like the non-professional degrees were very arbitrarily picked. I mean, like a lot of the professions are like medical, so things like pharmacists and physical therapists and those sort of things, and then like lawyers and accountants you could throw in there who might be non-professional, and they took a lot of them out, left in like doctors basically and theologians. So theologians were the one that they left in that seemed to be like the odd bird out. If you're gonna like, they just took away all the other things. And like for example, physical therapy is a doctoral level degree, as are nurse practitioners. And so like you're saying someone who has a doctorate of physical therapy is not a profession. Someone who has a doctorate of nurse practitioning is not a profession. Just seems pretty arbitrary. Whatever in terms of like you deciding that, but the things that really matter is that they're lowering the amount that they will pay for student loans, and so that's effectively going to do is going to mean that either only like rich people are going to become doctors because the loan cap is so low compared to like what actually people need to take out, and not only for doctors but for nurses now, it's going to like potentially make the nursing and doctor shortage worse, which is a weird time to do that as there's a huge shortage of everything right now. But also it like, if, poor people can't get the loans that they need to finish to become a doctor, it just means that there's going to be less, people from impoverished backgrounds becoming physicians, which, is is a thing. And I guess if you're okay with just like rich folks becoming doctors only, then like, you know, what has that impact? If you look at like the proportion of like who from like in terms of like social class where doctors come from, usually I would say in broad terms, people from poorer backgrounds often do things like primary care, whereas folks who maybe are legacy and other things maybe to choose other specialties, just because in terms of like, you know, reasons for going into medicine and outlook and things. That's clearly a broad generalization, but generally I would say that's probably true. First generation people probably do more, you know, primary care. Legacy folks probably do more specialization. So, you know, kind of an interesting thing, and I don't really understand that because I mean, the student loans are so, you know, you can't bankrupt, you can't get that out of them for bankruptcy. You know, they're there and they're stuck. You can't get rid of them. So it seems bizarre to me that you wouldn't want them to take those loans out. That being said, you know, the government does subsidize them, so maybe it does cause some sort of cost to them to do student loans that I don't fully understand. But it just seems strange to me that they are limiting it. So if you're poor, you don't have the money to like finish medical school, you either then have to take a very high interest rate private loan, which is then is also going to like maybe dissuade you from going to primary care, which pays less than like hyper specialties and all these other things. So it's interesting. I think it's going to have negative outcomes. Who knows? We'll see what the final thing will be.
Yeah, I have a NBC News article up now that I'm going to read from, but with our discussion 6 days ago or something like that, the only thing that I could find, and it did seem somewhat legitimate, like you just pointed out, was that since they're government loans, the government was saying, so I guess the Trump administration is saying that there are certain paths you can take that can lead to professionalism and maybe even high incomes. But when you look at these specific fields, some fields have a default rate that is much higher than other fields. Even if you can't erase them through bankruptcy, if people aren't paying them, they're not getting paid. And then the article we looked at previously, I'll see if NBC News mentions this, was that the move was specifically also aimed to stop people from being able to get their loans forgiven. And it sounded like, you know, if you take a certain job or if you're a government worker or something for a certain amount of time, your loan can be forgiven. And they were finding that certain degrees were leading to not only more defaulting on the loans, but also having the loans be forgiven at a higher rate. And they were trying to not have that happen, because if a loan's forgiven, then, you know, the government just eats the cost. That was what I got from that. But this is NBC News. I have this over on my Twitch and Rumble streams. All my links at bit.ly/NEWZ debate. Join the conversation. Leave us a voice message over on Stereo. Request to speak over on Twitter Spaces. The Trump administration's plan to redefine what constitutes a professional degree would exclude nursing and limit access to student loans, outraging national healthcare groups and leaving nursing students questioning how they will pay for graduate degrees. Previously, graduate students could borrow federal loans up to the cost of their degree. But under the new proposal, there would be caps on loans based on whether students are enrolled in a program that is considered professional or not. And this was something I also mentioned. They need another word. Like, they need to just have like, try not to use A or B, because that sort of signifies A is the first or one is the, but like they just need to have different terms. So like it's term 1 and term 2 rather than professional or not professional, because the term professional, I think, is also leading to some of this outrage. There's other reasons to be upset, but that specific word, I think, is kind of a pressure point for all this. The change actually comes from Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. Students in graduate programs will now be capped at $20,500 per year with a lifetime limit of $100,000. But for students seeking a quote unquote professional degree, loan limits are higher, $50,000 per year with a lifetime limit of $200,000. Professional degrees now includes pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary medicine, chiropractic, law, just says medicine in general here, optometry, osteopathic medicine, podiatry, and as Bjorn pointed out correctly, theology. The other article we read, they interviewed a bunch of experts, and one said that, okay, this sort of makes sense for the reasons I just mentioned a moment ago. But theology seems to be a very political inclusion, probably because of the fact that it's dealing with religion. So that one definitely doesn't make sense compared to the others. Undergraduate students will not be affected by these new limits. The American Nurses Association quickly sounded the alarm on this, and the new student loan caps take effect in July 2026. I'm sure there are some students who will be affected by this, like mid-degree, but I think it was nice that this does go forward a little bit into the future. So the Education Department says it uses the term professional degree to distinguish between programs that qualify for higher loan limits. The term does not determine the importance of a program and has no bearing on whether a program is professional in nature or not. So once again, I think if we switch some, usually, as Bjorn knows, as Better Vibes know, I don't like switching terms, but here I think there's some value. I don't know that this is about wokeness. This is just about not putting people down if their degree is no longer considered professional, because the administration itself is saying this is not about whether a degree is professional in nature or not. Let's see. Is there? Okay, let's find more. Students are basically, they interviewed a bunch of students who say that this will hurt them. So, Undersecretary of Education Nicholas Kent says that the change will put pressure on universities to lower their tuition so students don't have to go into insurmountable debt to finance degrees. There is data that shows, like, this is a real thing, it's not made up, that the more money students have been able to get over time through federal loans has directly correlated to increases in private and public university fees across the country. So, okay, correlation versus causation, but there's a lot of data that shows that giving students more money in federal loans actually just allows universities to charge more. So, I think there's a point there to be made. The Education Department says it data points to the fact that 95% of nursing students borrow under the $20,500 new annual limit and won't be affected by the change. But data from the National Center for Education Statistics says that graduate nursing programs cost, on average, more than $30,000 a year.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, because when you say nursing, I mean a whole host of things. It's like broad category, because you have, RNs who are 2-year RNs or bachelor's RNs versus master's level and then doctoral level nurses. And so as you go higher and higher, clearly the costs go up and up and up. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly where, you're drawing that line. So yeah, I think I don't know. It'll be, I do think that there's some validity in that, the having basically an open checkbook has allowed some universities probably to charge more. And if there's unlimited funds, then it seems like there's kind of a slow creep. And then it's kind of just based on market forces, if you will. Like, are you going to go to this university and go into this much debt? and you have enough money to like from your degree to pay off that debt or not. So I don't know. It seems like a hard thing, and I think a lot of universities are way over that as well. And so the question is, what's going to happen with that? Are they going to like reduce staff, shut down, etc.? I don't know. Or are they just going to say, well, sorry, students, you have to like take a bunch of extra private loans out? But it might also like lead to students choosing less expensive universities, eschewing especially like the Ivy Leagues, who charge a lot more for their degrees, and the private institutions also charge quite a bit more. It was also interesting to me. I mean, not that, there's value in terms of different things, but also chiropractic was in there. And so, like, arguably, doctoral level nurses should at least be on par with chiropractors, in my opinion. But I don't know. It's just interesting. The choice seemed very, like, the list seemed very random to me. But maybe they were looking at it from monetary. I mean, there's a lot more nurses out there, and I feel like they just wanted to clear the nurses out because there's a ton of nurses out there. And so, like, probably looking at the volumes of things, are just like, let's just say nurses aren't professional. That way, we don't have to like cover all this funds that we're pumping out all the time. I don't know. I think these are probably mostly monetary decisions that I don't fully grasp, but
You correctly pointed out there are a lot of different kinds of nurses, but you also just talked about the idea that maybe there's also a lot of nurses out there. I was under the impression that generally nurses and doctors, we don't have as many as we need. So maybe I was confusing myself. Is that the case? We have a shortage of nurses and doctors generally, right?
yes, but just in terms of like, I would say that, there are by volume nurses than doctors. Just think about it in like the hospital. Like, the doctor will go see, say they have 20 patients that they're going to go see in the hospital. That means that each of those patients are, being seen by like nurses who have like ratios that are like higher than that. So if the doctor's seeing 20 patients, the nurses have a max ratio of like 8 in like the floor, or like 4 or 2 in the ICU, as well as they're there 24 hours a day. So you're going to have like 3 shifts of nurses covering the one patient versus one doctor who's there. So like, nurses in a way are kind of like form of physician extender, because they are the ones who are there seeing the patient, evaluating them, reporting back to the doctor, hey, blood pressure's tanking, come and do this thing. The doctor is not there all the time, but the nurses are there all the time. And those are like typically like bachelor level nurses. But when you're talking about like doctoral level nurses who are like prescribing medicines, that's like a different sort of category. And there's probably less of them than maybe doctors, but I don't really know. I'm just kind of guessing. But in terms of bachelor level nurses, there's a ton of them. And so I guess it kind of depends on, where, if you look at the whole volume, I would imagine there's more nurses than there are physicians in the country. That's something like probably ChatGPT can tell us.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And you also, like you said, you see nurses. Like if I go to the doctor, I'll see 4 different nurses. Someone will check me in, someone will weigh me, someone else will come in, and then there's someone who does the blood. I don't know if that's a nurse or some other title. So no, I understand and agree with what you're saying. With your experience in the medical field, do you just, off the top of your head, do you have an idea of how something like this could have been, in theory, obtained in a different way that wouldn't have pissed off a lot of people? So by that I mean, this article does not specifically mention it, but we looked at a couple. Was it this last weekend that we did this show where Shannon brought up this great topic that I wasn't aware of? They were saying that certain degrees people default on the loans more. They were saying that there are programs that will just forgive your loans, which is great for you, but then the government just has to eat that cost. So if the idea is to have less defaults, less wiping away of loans, but still try to fill the nurse shortage and not put people down. Is there a way to do this? I feel like this might be one of those things where if you're trying to reach these goals, and we can debate whether or not these are the goals we should be trying to reach, but if these are issues, how do you do this in a way that's better than what we're seeing is going to take place starting July 2026? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, just emblematic of this administration is that they approach everything with like a ham-fisted approach without like really truly understanding the optics of what they're doing. And I think that like there is like a political like win here that's probably just unrealized, that you could have said, hey, we think these universities are charging you guys too much money, so we're going to like say they can't charge you more than this amount for these degrees. We're going to max them out, so they can't charge you more than this. And it effectively have done the same thing, but then they're like, the universities are the bad guys instead of like the government. So I don't know. But then I think that's socialism. So they probably didn't want to do that. And, so it's kind of like if you have this idea that like federal government shouldn't be regulating things and they shouldn't like be paying people stuff, then you just like take the money away and you let it all figure out. Because I think also they, obviously doesn't like a lot of higher ed and universities. And so this also is going to hurt those universities as well, presumably, as probably they're going to hopefully will reduce their rates down a little bit to like match this. And if not, then, probably people will go there less and might close them down, or who knows. That's what have to happen. I don't really know what the implications, but I feel like they could have come at this from a little different direction, because I think there is a problem here, but I think they could have just come at it from the other direction. But maybe that's too communisty for them.
Yeah, it's like everything with the Trump administration. We were talking to Better Vibes earlier in the show, was bringing it up again, the demolishing of the East Wing. I have no problem with updating the White House, especially in a way that gives them new capacity that they haven't had for more than 100 years. I think when we discussed it, I read in like the late 1800s, sometime in the mid to late 1800s, they were having parties in the White House with hundreds of people. They just can't do that anymore. And actually, it was quite destructive. Like there would just be a lot of damage. So the idea that they have a ballroom with 999 seating capacity, which please just find a chair and add it so it's 1,000. Come on now. Easy math. That makes sense to me, but the way they went about it, terrible. And just like now with the, I guess, best case scenario pause on the visas for Afghan nationals, and also undoing ones that were issued but hadn't gone into effect. I haven't read anything yet that shows that they're kicking people out of the country, but I guess that would be the next step. When you have, the alleged killer of one National Guard member and shooting another who's now in hospital under lock and key, and we'll see whether or not he pulls through with his injuries because he was also shot. You can understand that you would have a pause and you would reevaluate, but the way they went about it, the words that the president chose, once again, terrible, terrible, terrible. So it's no surprise that this situation seems to be the same thing. Yes, maybe universities are just paying attention to the rise in the amount of money that students can take out, and they can just increase their fees. Once again, if you look up the data, it does show clear correlation between more money can be taken out in federal loans and universities charge more. It's not necessarily a one-to-one causal relationship, but it seems to be there. And then if you also have certain professions leading to more not paying back their loans, or the loans are, gone because you worked this job for 5 years. Great for you. Maybe it's bad for the government to give out loans to people that just disappear and they have to eat the cost. But the way they go about it is very Trumpian Um, and very, as you pointed out, Bjorn, I like what you said there about the free market. They're trying to adjust using the different pressures that they have control over. But in this NBC article, I didn't read them, but they spoke to a lot of nursing students talking about how it was going to negatively affect them. So yeah, people always get hurt in the process. Maybe 5 years from now, once this is the situation, and if it's not changed, then the universities can start to adjust. Or as you pointed out, people can just seek out more bang for your buck programs, which is certainly an ability people have now, but maybe they'll have a little more urgency to do that because they can borrow less money. And perhaps more of those opportunities will start to creep up when universities realize they can't charge as much as they did previously. But what does that turn into? Like you said, Bjorn, they're going to have to cut costs somewhere. So this is the problem with Trump. You know, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I'm a left person on most things. But the Trump administration makes points that sometimes are hard to sweep aside. It's just the way that they go about it. But as I often argue, the reason Trump gets so much stuff done and has really tested what the president can do, with the answer usually being, yeah, you can do whatever you want. No one else just really tried that before Trump. When all this happens, you can accomplish a lot, but a lot of people get hurt in the process, even if it's just something as, I don't want to say minuscule, but as not so super important, the label. So professional versus unprofessional. The government has gone so far to say that professional is not actually whether a program is professional in nature or not. It's just the term that we use. But you can imagine another president, particularly maybe a Democrat, if they were going to unveil this plan, it would also replace professional with some sort of other system that doesn't rub people the wrong way like this. I can only imagine if I was in a profession or in the middle of earning a degree to become part of a profession, and I was just told it wasn't professional. People are clearly going to talk about that. It's going to be, it's going to be, whether or not it's written on your name tag, it's going to be there. So these are the touches that Trump either cannot do because of the type of person he is, or probably chooses not to do. Maybe a little mixture of A and B. Okay, we have gone more than 2 hours. We were coming up here on 3 hours, but I'm happy to keep going. This is probably the last show I'll do this week, and then I'll be back to maybe like 1 or 2 shows a week. Good week would be 2 shows. But we got to keep it going. So Bjorn, do you have any topics you want to jump to, or Better Vibes, or anybody over on Stereo? Feel free to leave a voice message. We were originally talking about the pause on Afghan visas. We started talking about Venezuela. Trump has declared, even though he doesn't really have this power, once again, Trump overreaches and usually wins with the overreach, has declared Venezuela's airspace to be a no-fly zone. And so basically is pressuring airlines to adhere to that new policy, even though I guess technically they don't have to. And of course, this is just a ramp up of previous fears. They have the largest aircraft carrier right off the coast of Venezuela, the USS Gerald R. Ford, taller than the Eiffel Tower, not quite as tall as the Empire State Building, or long, I guess I should say. So it doesn't mean we're going to invade Venezuela, but if we were going to, this is probably how you would do it, or at least bomb them and try to win that way rather than putting troops on the ground. I feel like even Trump isn't going to put troops on the ground in Venezuela, but boy, if there was somebody who was going to, once again, Trump would be someone who, God, it's hard to be surprised by anything he does nowadays. I was surprised. We talked about this in our most recent show when Trump started issuing death threats to members of Congress over that video where they were trying to remind members of the military. I don't know that they need the reminder that they don't have to obey unlawful orders. So yeah, that's just another thing that's happened in the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of news in the last 2 weeks, despite the Thanksgiving holiday.
It's always something.
Oh, hey, we have
Yeah, I
Auntie
mean, I
Get
think.
Balls over there on Stereo, as well as Miss Smitty. Oh, I'm sorry, Bjorn, continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in regards to like Venezuela, I think it's definitely been the most aggression that Trump has showed in terms of like, he calls himself fixing, what he calls himself, a peacemaker program president or whatever. But definitely, like, the war drums are beating towards Venezuela. It just seems totally random. I mean, I feel like who would have picked that out of the map? Like, who we were going to attack? You would have maybe picked North Korea or something instead. But yeah, just out of the blue, like Venezuela, we're doing these extrajudicial killings, these boaters, these who knows who these people are that they're blowing up. You could just say they're a drug runner. You blow them up. It just kind of seems all crazy to me and really wild. One of the Fox News folks, I forget exactly who it was, so I don't want to exactly say, but someone who was a Republican was just like, yeah, it's going to be great. Wait till we get all the oil that Venezuela has. Apparently, Venezuela has lots of oil reserves, like 17%. It's like, is this going to be another like fruitless like oil war that we're going to start? Like, is that why we're doing this? I don't know. I mean, I guess Maduro, he hates Maduro or something for some reason. It just seems strange to me that we're like, pressuring this guy to like stop being president. It's got a lot of oil. He's talking about, oh yeah, ground war would be easy. Yeah, so I just think it's going to be disastrous and not good for our image, for American lives lost, for Venezuelan lives lost. And, what is the point of it? It just seems like such like a wasted time. And like, it's just a full wag the dog moment just to like distract us from, all of his other controversies. It just seems so useless and a terrible tragedy that's about to fall. And I think that, Kelly and others were probably reading the room and understanding, whoa, he's basically going to go to war with Venezuela. I think that's partially probably why they put out that video, is because they were seeing that he's heading this direction. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a wild time and not good. I think he starts to bomb Venezuela, and if he decides to do ground assault. No, what's the goal? Just attack until you take out their president, and then what? Then we like hang out there and rebuild, take their oil. I don't know. It just seems bizarre to me.
Yeah, and then 20 years later, if it turns into a war, we'll have this same sort of, well, what about the Venezuelans who helped U.S. forces? Like, shouldn't they get a special visa to come to the United States? And then, well, what about the guys who were part of the real secretive, were they Unit Zero? I can't recall what this Afghan guy was a part of. Zero units who like maybe did some shady things and killed a bunch of people, made people disappear. Like, what effect does that have on them? And then they come to the U.S. and maybe something unfortunate. I know that's drawing a lot of connections there, but that's what happened with Afghanistan. Though you can imagine that maybe if we invade Venezuela and then afterwards we have a terrible military withdrawal, it wouldn't turn into Afghanistan. It's not that sort of situation. But yeah, call a spade a spade. That's what we're running into right now. And it's a hard situation because like I'm sorry, go on, Bjorn.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying we have like such a terrible history of regime change. We're not good at it, and especially in Latin, South America, wherever you want to say in the world, Middle East, wherever, where we've attempted regime changes, it doesn't go well. It's destabilizing, causes like poverty and instability, seemingly ends up always backfiring and causing the opposite of what everything we thought it was going to do. So I don't know. It's like, I feel like, and it's anti-democratic. I feel like if a country elects a communist in there, even if we don't like them, what are we going to do? It's their country. It just seems like so, imperialistic of us to just decide that we don't like how you're ruling your country, so we're just going to go in and fight you because we don't like your president. It's so bizarre to me. I think not good for us to be doing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Regime change. When was the last time that worked? And it worked like super, super well? World War II. I mean, look at Germany. Look at Japan. I guess you could argue Italy. Like, I think Germany is a better example than Italy. So let's just go Germany and Japan. That worked really, really well. What was the major difference between those and like Vietnam and although I guess Iraq is still much better than Afghanistan, so let's just look at Afghanistan, or like all the stuff that they tried to do in Latin America over several decades after World War II. Without looking into a lot of the details, I would argue, I believe I've made this argument on the show previously, it's because we never left. We're still in Japan. We're still in Germany. I mean, we're all over the world, but certainly we're still in Germany. Certainly we're still in Japan. So I would argue like we can do regime change. It just has to be something basically over the life of an individual or a very large chunk, if not half of an individual's life. We're still in Germany. We're still in Japan. World War II ended quite some time ago. So I guess a little devil's advocacy here is that regime change can work. You just have to, it's like a marriage. It works if you make it work. If the partner decides, whatever. So, I mean, if we want regime change, you got to fight for it. And it takes a really long time. But I guess I would argue it is possible. Just nobody wants to be in Venezuela for the next 60 years. Certainly no one wanted to be in Afghanistan for 60 years. We made it like around 20 years, and then that ended poorly. But then again, okay, little devil's advocacy of my devil's advocacy. While Japan is certainly very different than a lot of American culture, Germany is much closer. There's a lot of German-American heritage. Whether or not we recognize it, it's there. So I guess you have the length that you're in the country after fighting stops, if you will. But then also you have, well, how well do we know them? And that's why I bring this up, is because Afghanistan, there's just so much going on there that's different. Even Japan being East Asia, like, I mean, they had infrastructure, they were working hard, they wanted to take over Asia and optimize everything. So I mean, there were some things we could work with. Plus, of course, we had a lot of troops in Japan, just like we had after World War II in Germany. So it's like sheer numbers. It's like, how well can we not communicate with them, but like how well can we identify with them so we can understand what's going on and understand cultural pressures and governmental pressures, and how long do you want to stay? I think for Venezuela, we certainly have the cultural, like, we understand Venezuela and the people of Venezuela probably a hell of a lot better than we ever understood the people of Afghanistan. But then it's the numbers you'd have to put in there and the time that you would have to keep them there. And then, since this would not be a world war, hopefully, then you have like the weirdness of trying to like be an incision into Latin America, where the rest of the continent, Central, South, and North America, is not at war. At least with World War II, like, the entire world was fighting and like, oh man, millions of people were dying. So staying afterwards made sense. They're like, okay, never again. This is maybe what we should have done with World War I and tried to set things up so it wouldn't lead to another war. to do all that and have all that buy-in and all that emphasis with just an invasion of Venezuela, just like we had with Afghanistan. Okay, you had Iraq and Afghanistan going at the same time, but though, you know, that was not a world war. We had our coalition of the willing, but by no stretch of the imagination was that World War III. So I think there are some things that put us in a better spot for regime change and maintaining that into the future with Venezuela than like in Afghanistan, but still no one wants to do that. We've done that before. It hasn't worked in Latin America, but you could argue if you do it and you do it right, it still could be possible. And then on top of all of that, like no one would argue that Venezuela is doing well. I don't think most people would argue that their current government is a government that like the people want and like is helping the people. So yeah, I don't know. It's a big mix, but I guess I would just say that it could work. You just imagine that it probably would not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is that public opinion has a lot to do with how long someone can sustain a war. You know, when you're fighting Nazis in imperialist Japan, like they were very aggressive and clearly like doing lots of aggressive stuff. And so the world pushed back against them. And so I feel like the public will to like make sure the Nazis didn't come back was very strong. Make sure imperialist Japan died was definitely strong. I feel like there's very few Americans who care or want to go to Venezuela to fight there. I just feel like the public perception of this, if he does start a war there, is not going to be good, and it won't last very long. So it will be probably just a minimal, you know, bomb thing until he tries to like get Maduro out. I feel like if he tries to like do more than that, it's just not going to go well. I don't think Trump is going to have the. I mean, his ratings are already so low. I think they would just tank further if he were to do that. And the other part of that is like you know that Putin would love to like supply them with like weapons and start sending them weapons if we were in a war with them, because you know the way that you beat big countries is to do like, you know, guerrilla tactics. Like, you know, look at Ukraine. I mean, everyone's surprised how long they've stood up against you know, Russia, you know, but they are also being propped up by the West. So I'm sure that Putin would love to like prop them up a little bit just to put some hurt on us and fight another like sort of like proxy war. And then then what do we have? Then we have another like Putin like Russia, you know, ally, you know, in this hemisphere. I don't know. I just see there's being so many other problems. But I think that, you know, the difference between Germany and Japan is the public will. You know, we wanted to be in that war and we were going to just fight to like crush them. Similar to like, you know, Vietnam. Eventually, we were not wanting to be in that war, and so we're like, let's get out. We did not want to be in Afghanistan. We did not want to be in Iraq publicly, and so the presidents kind of follow suit. And I don't think anybody wants to be in Venezuela. And there hasn't been an argument, been cohesive from the administration about why we need to be going in there, besides like blah, 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 drugs. And supposedly like all the cocaine they make goes to Europe anyways. So it doesn't even make sense, their arguments. So I don't know. It seems like a trumped up war, if you could use the unintended, and it's just not going to work out well for anyone if he ends up doing it.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, you know, no one is signing up, even if we did invade, no one's be like, I'm going to go fight in Venezuela. But, you know, World War II is the exact opposite. Even before Pearl Harbor, people were willing to go fight for the United States. We had pilots who, I guess they volunteered. I'm not sure what the technical description would be, but we had American pilots who went and flew against the Germans in Europe. I don't know that happened in Japan, but I'm sure somebody did. Yeah, no one's going to go do that. Just like with Ukraine, we had Americans who went and fought, and some died defending Ukraine against the Russian invasion. And yeah, it's really interesting to think tit for tat. So we propped up Ukraine. I don't think Ukraine would still be there if it wasn't for the West. Despite the bravery and stuff, like, they just didn't have the capacity. Um, so then to go screw us over in Venezuela, yeah, okay, I didn't think about that, but if the shoe fits, let's jump over here to stereo. Let's hear from Sash McFlash. I think this is a real message.
I guess my question is, like, what has Venezuela ever accomplished, like, on the global spectrum, and like, why should we care? I mean, they got their independence from Spain, but I mean, there are a lot of people that helped them.
Yeah, it's interesting to think, what have they accomplished? I've never framed it that way. But Bjorn has correctly pointed out the oil. Venezuela has a lot of that. There is, to be fair, there is the drug thing. But as Bill Maher always says, if you're going to invade a country about drugs, it's in South America. It's not Venezuela. He's like, all the coke I get's from Colombia. So even if we go for what he says, it's not, it's triage. If you have a broken arm and then you are also bleeding on your hands, like, yeah, let's put a bandage on the hand, but maybe the broken arm's the one that you should be worried about. Venezuela doesn't seem to be, as Bjorn put it, just seems kind of random. Yeah, I don't see it either. Which makes me think, I guess, to wrap up this specific topic, we could keep going on any other topics, but maybe to put a bow on this, I really do not believe that we will have a war with Venezuela. I could see us bombing Venezuela, but when we, within the last week, I'll just leave it at that because I can't remember what show it was, we were talking about what the president can do. I believe the president can blow up ships the way that Trump has. I believe the president could invade Venezuela, or as Bjorn offered within the last week, the UK. If Trump wanted to, tomorrow we could invade the UK and we could keep fighting that war for weeks and weeks and weeks. Every president in our lifetime has used this power to bomb, to invade. I know we did get the congressional approval for the war in Iraq, but we didn't need to. Congress is basically about time. So, like, how long the conflict is. And even then, the research we were looking up during that show, when we went really in depth on this, that's vague too. When it comes to the military, the president can kind of do whatever they want. That all being the case, and even though I always, I think correctly, point out how Trump has shown just how powerful the presidency is, and everybody else before him was just too weak to do that. Anyone could have done this before Trump. He just decided to do it. And even if you look at his first term, he wasn't doing this. So this was a learning experience for him too. Despite the fact that he could invade Venezuela, he could have land, sea, and air, a complete invasion of Venezuela just by executive action. Absolutely legal, could do it starting tomorrow. I don't think he will. I don't think Republicans would really want that. I aside from somebody on Fox News being like, look at the oil, and maybe, Dick Cheney, may he rest in peace. I don't know. It's kind of a piece of shit. So maybe I take that back. But I don't even think some greedy, power-hungry vice president like Dick Cheney would be like, yeah, Venezuela. If we didn't have Iraq and we didn't have Afghanistan, I think it has been long enough since Vietnam that we've forgotten. And clearly we did, because we had Iraq and Afghanistan. Though Iraq, actually, if you really dig into it, Iraq's actually been more of a success than most people probably would think. Clearly, there were a lot of problems after mission accomplished, but much more successful invasion and regime change than Afghanistan. But we still have that. We have that bad taste in our mouth from those two combined wars. And so it's not the same situation as it was in the early 2000s when it had been long enough after Vietnam for us to be like, we could do this. I don't think anybody thinks we can do this. Even if it just comes to the will of the American people to stomach it and sign up for the military and all that stuff, Bjorn is absolutely correct. We had that at times in the past. After September 11th, for instance, we don't have that now. We have no September 11th here, even though we probably should have invaded Saudi Arabia rather than Afghanistan and Iraq. We don't have that. So we are stuck with this makes no sense, even though Trump could absolutely invade Venezuela. And I don't think he will. I could imagine we shoot some missiles off the aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest one in our fleet, could do something. But I can't imagine this would turn into, because what's the benefit for Trump? I don't see it. We had this urgency after September 11th to do something. There's no urgency here. I don't see it. Would you agree with that, Bjorn, or Better Vibes over on Twitter Spaces? I can't imagine, even for Trump, that he would invade Venezuela. I think we could have some bombing. I'm hesitant to even think we would have bombing, but every president has bombed somewhere. So I guess Trump needs to add that to his resume. But I can't imagine this actually moving forward.
I think it depends on how strongly he wants to distract. I mean, I feel like he just does so many things that you don't expect, out of the box that you would never really expect. I mean, and he states that's part of his strategies. You never really know who you're going to walk into when you're going to go negotiate with Trump, whether it's happy, mad, or just like unpredictable. Who knows what he would do. I feel like if there is like truly like bad things coming from him on the Epstein files, I mean, if it was like truly bad, like it just like, here you go, here's all the things that Trump did. I could see him just being like, nope, we're gonna invade over here and we're just gonna keep it going for 3 years. While I have like martial law, and then I'm gonna pardon myself as I'm going out the door. I don't know. It's not inconceivable. But I also don't know what's in those files or all those sort of things, or what's he really going to do. But if you don't go down that sort of conspiracy theory rabbit hole, yeah, I agree with you. Probably there's not as much political will to like really do a strong ground offensive there, as there's like zero political will that I know of besides in Trump's own brain.
I'm going to go on record here. I think it is infinitely more likely that rather than Trump invades, like an actual war, like, Afghanistan and Iraq were not like World War II. I don't know that we've engaged in Korea. Those are pretty big. Probably Korea was the last war I would say was, and even then, that was just because we wanted to be there. So I would say we haven't actually had a war for the true definition of war in my mind since World War II. But okay, Korea, definitely more of an engagement than Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. And I know there's other actions and stuff in between there. But if we're going to call what hypothetically could happen in in Venezuela, too many V's, a war, I think it is infinitely more likely that Donald Trump tells the nation that aliens are real and he has found the files and he has found the bodies. We are not alone. Then we invaded Venezuela. I absolutely believe that. No matter what's in the Epstein files. And I can't even think like, I know that they passed the Epstein Transparency Act or something, and I think Trump even signed it already. Whatever the case, nothing is going to be released. Trump's, we're going to have emails between Epstein and his brother talking about how Trump blew Bubba, stuff like that. But there's not going to be anything in there more than that sort of thing that they can easily just say nothing's here, nothing's here. So I don't even not to say that you're wrong on that, Bjorn, but I don't even think that the distraction is necessary, and I think even Trump knows that. And then the whole idea of pardoning himself, I mean, he could just do that without the war, and then he just would have a low approval rating for 3 years unless he could just, because he can distract us on anything. I mean, he was making death threats to Congress people recently. I guess I would say, to wrap it up, Trump is so creative to wag the dog in so many ways that he doesn't actually have to, the way that 90s movie did with that invented war. So, yeah, I think this is like everything. Like, Trump every once in a while gets hard on Russia. He gets hard on China. He gets hard on this country, that country, and then just flips the next day. I don't know that he's going to flip on Venezuela, but maybe, maybe that's the goal, is that, whether or not it's regime change, he just has something he wants from Venezuela. And if they realize that, or maybe that's already been discussed and they're just unwilling to do it. But if that happens and that flip gets switched, it's all done. I just don't see any meat on the bone here. It certainly is a possibility. It's a non-zero chance. I'll give you that. And it's so weird because we've all agreed it makes no sense. I just don't see it. So I'm not worried about it. And by all means, those could be famous last words. I just don't see it. Yeah, because what's the benefit? I feel like he can get the benefit so many other ways of just like, hey, look over here, and all the drawbacks. That's why I say maybe we do some bombing. Clinton bombed, Obama bombed, everybody bombed somewhere. I don't know if Trump's done that. Certainly hasn't done one that I remember. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I really don't see anything here. But, gosh, you can imagine how this could change on a dime. If something... Yeah, no, that's the other thing, because they have the USS Gerald R. Ford down there. So just imagine some shots are fired, because if we're down there and we get attacked by Venezuela, then, we have the end. Then there's no... It's like what happened here with the unfortunate National Guard shooting. Let's say Trump was always waiting to stop the visa process for Afghan nationals. I don't think he was, but let's say he was. And then it fell on his lap. He's like, well, I can do this now. And anyone who argues with me, okay, maybe they have some points, but boy, do I have some points as well. If we're down there and some shots are fired, that changes everything. And I didn't think about that. So we have to hope that no one's trigger happy down in Venezuela. No boats are going to exchange fire. Nothing. I don't know what their military capabilities are, but nothing's going to be, no mishaps. I think that's much more likely to start a conflict. And yeah, so I'll slightly adjust my answer. Trump is not going to invade Venezuela. He's not going to start a war, but us being down there makes the possibility of an accidental war possible. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay, we had Better Vibes. Check out over on Twitter Spaces. We've been going almost 3.5 hours. Bjorn, anything else you want to cover before we wrap up the show? It was great connecting with you. We also talked about the family and how you're raising your kids. But if there's anything else you want to discuss.
No, I'm just doing the dishes. I'll just listen for the closure.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, look at that. 21st century man doing the dishes, handing out points to his kids, baking pies. Wow. The embodiment of progressiveness in the Pacific Northwest. All right. So that's going to wrap it. Appreciate everybody. It was fun doing a couple extra shows this last week than I normally do. I assume I'll do a show this next weekend. That's my normal schedule. So I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and we have a little bit of time left before a lot of people go to work on Monday. Appreciate y'all. Check out all my links at bit.ly/NEWZ debate, and big thanks to all my supporters like Bjorn, Better Vibes, Shannon, Apostate Nate. We had jump in for a hot second over on Twitter Spaces. Appreciate their support over on patreon.com/NEWZ debate. That's going to do it. Have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.